Everyone here. We have 3 sessions this afternoon on a variety of topics. Just for everyone's noting that it is being recorded and that recordings will be made available afterwards should everyone be interested. Our first session will be on human rights, poverty, and social justice. And we're looking forward to very interesting presentations. Just for the presenters, just for your noting, you will have 10 minutes to present. After 8 minutes, I will switch on my camera, so then you'll know you have about 2 minutes left. And then we'll have just a short session for questions after each presentation, and then we will go to the next presenter. Our first session will be on understanding the crisis, examining violence against women in South Africa as an event that seriously disturbs public order in terms of the African Refugee Convention, presented by Dr. Karen Chinyan and Ms. Chanel Grosh. Karen and Chanel, you can share your screen, and then I'll just introduce you to the attendees. Karen Chinyan is a senior lecturer in the Department of Criminal Justice and Procedure in the Law Faculty at UWC. She researches human rights and gender and refugee law within the context of social justice. Karen is co-presenting or is joined by Chanel Grosh, who's an LLM candidate at UWC, where she also serves as a graduate lecturing assistant in the law faculty. Her thesis examines African refugee law, focusing on how violence against women in South Africa constitutes public disorder. Her research is dedicated to deepening the understanding of the African Refugee Convention and contributing to academic discourse and practical solutions in refugee law and gender rights. You can now commence with your presentation, ladies.
Thank you so much, Chair. I would like to just say good afternoon to our colleagues and other students that might be viewing this presentation. I'm presenting with my master's student, Chanel, and the research that we are presenting is based on her thesis, and I will just be playing a very small role in this presentation, and Chanel will be presenting most of her work.
Karen, can I just ask you, if it's possible, just to put it in presentation mode, if you can?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is that fine, Chair?
All good. You can proceed.
Thank you. So the first thing we needed to do was contextualize this presentation and the research in terms of the SDGs. And this falls under SDG 5, looking at violence against women, which is the SDG 5 is about achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. And the specific target within that goal is to end all violence against and exploitation of women and girls. Now, Article 1 of the UN Declaration on Violence Against Women, also called DIVO, provides a definition of what violence against women is and what it constitutes. And really interesting is to note that it is physical, sexual, or psychological harm or suffering, anything that deprives somebody of their liberty, any kind of force, coercion, and so on, but also importantly, that it can be from a private source, which is in your private domestic life, or even a public source, which is the state. And of course, in South Africa, we do know that there is so many women that have been in the headlines for receiving so much violence against them, but also, of course, dying at the hands of their perpetrators. Some of them, of course, being their intimate partners. And there are just a few names in terms of Jessie S, in terms of Unene, in terms of Riva Steenkamp. But of course, these are the women that make the headlines. There are so many, many more that do not make those headlines. And what happens to those women? And so just to look at some of the statistics around this, we can see that almost half of the violence perpetrated against women in South Africa comes from that private source in the domestic sphere, where the woman knows her perpetrator. So it's either a partner or somebody else that she's related to or that she knows. So these are some of those statistics, and we can see most of it when you put it together. It's somebody that she knows. But if we take a further snapshot, look at a further snapshot of this, we can see that the violence against women in South Africa is so bad that we've been called the femicide capital of the world. In 2015, it was started that 50% of women would be raped in a lifetime. And then 38 per 100,000 women would be raped in 2017. And that at that time was the highest globally. A couple of more things, that in 2016, femicide in South Africa was 5 times higher than the global average. And we can, of course, see in the last block in terms of April 2022 to March 2023, some of the latest stats, the high rate of sexual offenses and specifically rape as well. So this, we can see it is just escalating in South Africa, despite the fact that we have quite sophisticated laws that protect women. The top of the slide indicates the international laws that we are party to as South Africa, and that we've incorporated into our own laws. And the bottom half shows an African instrument that we are party to on women's rights. And then, of course, our South African Constitution, and then also very, very sophisticated ordinary legislation to deal with violence against women and sexual offenses. But despite all of these laws and policies and task forces, and how is it that we are still finding the escalation of violence against women, and what is it that we can do? What is what legal remedy can there be for women if what we have right now is not working? And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to my co-presenter, Chanel, to take it from here and look at.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So I'll continue from where Dr. Chinyan left. So as you mentioned, the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 focuses on achieving gender equality and empowering women, all women and girls. This goal encompasses eliminating violence, harmful practices, and discrimination based on gender, promoting women's participation in leadership, and ensuring equal access to education and economic opportunities. So, as Doc mentioned as well, despite South Africa's progressive legal framework aimed at safeguarding women from violence, such as the Domestic Violence Act, violence against women is spiraling out of control. So the rights to equality, life, freedom, dignity, and security are often violated. And this raises a critical question: what legal recourse do victims of violence against women have? So one potential avenue for protection that we look at in this article and in my LLM thesis is the African Refugee Convention. And according to this convention, a refugee includes individuals compelled to leave their habitual residence due to external aggression, occupation, or events seriously disturbing public order. So events seriously disturbing public order is not a phrase that is defined in the African Convention. So we define this phrase by stating that, or by defining it by a country engulfed by turmoil to such an extent that law and order can no longer be maintained, leaving inhabitants without protection. It includes occurrences of violence, gross violations of human rights, war, and severe climatic conditions that compel large numbers of individuals to seek refuge outside his or her country of origin. So there are interpretive challenges with the African Refugee Convention. A few that we identified includes that there is significant increase or significant reliance rather on the International Refugee Convention for guidance, which may lead to a Eurocentric interpretation rather than one that reflects African realities. Thank you. The lack of specific interpretive guidance from the African Union or the African courts aggravates this issue. I'm almost done. Leaving us dependent on UN or Western perspectives, rather. So two main questions need to be answered in assessing whether an event in question disturbs public order. One, is there a disturbance to public order? We assess this by looking at the country of origin information compared to listed indicators. I'll finish up quickly. So, okay, there we go. So one, we identified three indicators to be present concerning violence against women in South Africa. One, freedom from harm. Two, rule of law. And three, government institutions. So step two, or question two rather, is the disturbance serious? So in South Africa, the levels of violence against women signify a disturbance to public order. The pervasive nature of this violence affects the rights to life, physical integrity, and freedom of a substantial number of individuals. So the state's inability to adequately address and control this violence suggests that South Africa is in fact facing an event seriously disturbing public order. So in conclusion, given this context, violence against women is in fact, or does in fact qualify as an event seriously disturbing public order under the African Refugee Convention, which wardens specific protection. I think I'll finish there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can stop sharing your presentation and then I can just see any questions. You can just put up your hand, or I don't see any in the chat. Let me just see if there's any hands. Thanks a lot. Just from your side, Chanel, so this is your research and you're busy working on this. What did you find in your studies? What can we do right now? What would you say would be the most important next steps for us to look at? Maybe you and Corin can collectively just let us know.
Hi, Chair. Thank you for the question. Yes, I think collectively we will answer the question. So, like I mentioned, that my research does focus on the African Refugee Convention, and I think that's a important avenue of protection for women that face violence. So, what we could do is we could interpret the African Convention, and specifically the phrase that I mentioned in our presentation. We can interpret by using African refugee law or African philosophy, rather to interpret those things so that it can relate more to African realities rather than us relying on Western interpretations and perspectives. You wanna
Right.
add?
Yeah, I think that, and I know my colleague is also talking about this, Wendell. So but I think that a really big part of it is the criminal justice system as well. That there's so much within the processes that need to be fixed. In terms of, for instance, where there are somebody is charged with violence against women in terms of femicide or murder, in terms of any sexual offense, that there is a way that that person is then ultimately prosecuted and held accountable. And that very seldom happens. We find that particularly when we're talking about sexual offenses, that about 24 out of 25 persons are not prosecuted or they are acquitted. So so there needs to be issues around talking about bail and all those things, but within the criminal justice system. And that's just from one particular avenue. There are all kinds of other things in terms of what government needs to do. It's about the laws are there, but the implementation is not happening right now.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think that this is something that's going to come up with another presentation. Our next presenter, we're just going to try and win some time. Our next presenter is Ms. Najat Hussain. While you're coming online, Ms. Hussain, I'll just introduce you so you can share your presentation.
Okay, thank you.
It is on the road less traveled, constitutionalizing internal secession in Ethiopia. Ms. Hussain is a doctoral student at the University of the Western Cape. She holds a master's degree in alternative dispute resolution from UCT. Her professional endeavors include serving as a lecturing assistant in the Department of Law at UWC, a research assistant, and a junior editor of the African Student Law Journal. She's currently a Marie Skrutasa-Curie Fellow. Her research investigates the role of constitutional provisions in divided societies, with a particular focus on the African context, where divisions typically fall along ethnic lines. You have 10 minutes. Thank you, Najat. You can commence.
Thank you so much, Dr. van der Berg. Is my audio fine? I just want to double check if everything is okay.
Yes, all good.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. I am so honored to be here today to give a presentation on the research that I'm doing in my PhD thesis. And this specific presentation will be focusing on one chapter, chapter 4, which deals with internal secession in the Ethiopian constitution. And this research actually aligns with SDG 16, which focuses on promoting peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development. And just to give a brief introduction, when I do talk about internal secession, it is essentially where a municipality or district wants to break away from a province in which it is located and establish itself as its own province, but still remain within the country at large. So that is what I am referring to when I'm talking about internal secession, and I'll be explaining it further as we go along. So when I talk about the Ethiopian constitution, I think it's very pertinent to give a brief historical overview just so that you can have some understanding about how Ethiopia came to be the type of country it is today and how the constitution of 1995 came into be. But I am also going to emphasize, please, this is a very brief historical overview. I think like many other countries, Ethiopian history has such a vast and intricate historical background. It's far beyond the scope of what I can do in a 10-minute presentation. So, but the important thing to note is that for the most part, barring a few interruptions here and there, throughout Ethiopian history, Ethiopia was characterized as a very centralized state that was ruled by a monarchy, like a hereditary monarchy. And then later on, it also became known as the Ethiopian Empire. This lasted until 1974, when the final emperor Haile Selassie, which was very famous or infamous, was actually overthrown by what is referred to as a Derg military regime. And this was on the back of a lot of student protests at that time that was happening. And their ideology, the Derg's ideology, was heavily influenced by Marxist and Leninist ideals. And they wanted to focus more on the class issue that plagued the Ethiopian society. And they thought that was fixing the class issue would fix a lot of the turmoil that was going on in the country, to the extent that they largely underplayed other issues and downplayed the ethnic divisions. And ultimately, in 1991, this led to their own ousting by a group of ethnic militias that bounded together to create what is known as the Ethiopian People's Revolutionary Democratic Front, or EPRDF, that was led by the TPLF that came predominantly from the north. And their ideology was underpinned by the belief that the crux of Ethiopia's issue was based on ethnicity, ethnic conflict, and also how certain minority ethnic groups have faced discrimination and marginalization during the imperial regimes. And that is how, as you would have it, in 1995, Ethiopia became a federal nation, but not only a federal nation, it became what is known as an ethnic federal nation. And ultimately, when the 1995 constitution came into being, it divided the country into the 9 regional states that were based on ethnicity. So each state was, for the most part, named on a particular ethnic group that was dominant in that region. And this map will reflect that. You can see in the north, you have the Amhara, the Tigray, Afar, etc., etc. However, one notable exclusion to this was the southern regions here. You can see the blue arrow is pointing to that. For whatever reason, they were not given their own state based on the different ethnic groups, but instead 56 or so ethnic groups were clustered to create one region, and they were referred to as the Southern Nations and Nationality and Peoples regions. And this is very important for our subsequent, for my subsequent discussion, so please just keep note of that. All right. Now, after this brief historical overview, now I'm going to actually talk about the key provision of my research, which is Article 47, subsection 2. And this article is what gives the people of Ethiopia the right to establish their own regional state, or what the Ethiopians refer to as, quote unquote, their own mother state, right? And what is really unique about this is that hardly any, well, actually no other constitution in the world deems this as a constitutional right that the people have. It's more of just like a procedure that most constitutions outline, but it's hardly ever referred to as a constitutional right. So that's very unique. Another unique feature about this provision, as like I referred to before, is that it is based on ethnicity. So ethnicity becomes the sole criteria for different ethnic groups wanting to demand their own state, to the exclusion of maybe economic considerations or administrative considerations or the considerations of resources. Like all other countries have in their constitutions. The Ethiopian constitution solely bases it on ethnicity. And of course, this creates a lot of challenges, especially when you consider that Ethiopia is a very heterogeneous society with over 80 ethnic groups, and it's continuously growing. And the idea that though ethnic groups might not be finite, the land which the country has definitely is. And is it even feasible to grant every ethnic group their own mother state within a country? And if it's not, then what is the implications of having the right that in a constitution that's seen as an intrinsic right, but is not accessible or is not afforded to all of the different ethnicities? So that's one key issue with Article 47. Another key issue is the process or the procedure that is outlined in order to give effect to Article 47. It basically just states that a 2/3 majority of the Ethnic Council needs to pass a memo stating that they would like to request their own states. And if it does pass with a 2/3, then they can submit the request in writing to the state government or the regional government, and this would be the government that is found at this level. So usually the nationality zones and the Liu Waridas are the ones who will be submitting the application. For example, if Cape Town wanted to secede from the Western Cape, then they would have to submit that application to the Western Cape government. And what happens here is that this provision is actually very vague. A lot of the Ethiopian constitution is littered with a lot of vagaries that creates a lot of confusion. It doesn't clearly establish the role of the regional state government or the central state government. It doesn't even say whether or not the regional state government has a right to reject or accept the request based on any substantive reasons, or are they only there to serve an administrative role and facilitate the referendum that would have to be held? And then this ambiguity also creates a lot of room for conflict, especially when you consider that, naturally, a state would not like to willy-nilly just lose part of its territory, and they might be resistant to that. So then what is the answer for that? What is the answer for such conflicts when they arise? The Ethiopian constitution is very unclear. And of course, when this provision was actually tested for the first time in 2018 with the Sidama quest for statehood, this is when that conflict actually became clear, when the state government failed to actually prepare a referendum within the stipulated 1-year period. And there was a lot of conflict that came from that. The Sidama ethnic group in the south felt like this was a delay tactic, or this was the state government once again trying to thwart their attempts to establish their own state. There was talks about them even just unilaterally seceding and not even waiting for a referendum to be held. And also another issue that happened in this instance is a very, I believe, natural consequence of basing this internal secession right on ethnicity, or the establishment of the state on ethnicity, is that this creates incentives for groups to have a lot of vile political rhetoric and to be in competition with one another, and it promotes competition and it promotes conflict. And this is exactly what happened in the Sidama case. Okay, the minority ethnic group called the Walaita that was living in that region in the capital city of Hawassa, the Sidama activists were closing down their shops. There was a lot of slants and slogans being yelled at them. There was violence. Certain people were killed. Ultimately, the Sidama was saying this land belongs to us, and they were trying to kick out the Walaita ethnic group. And this, I think, was a clear consequence of, at least to a certain extent, of failure in drafting sufficient constitutional provisions to promote peace. And after the Sidama, in the successive years of 2021 and 2023, new states were also established in a little bit of a different procedure. And you can see this represents the current map of Ethiopia. As it stands today, you can see there's now 4 different regions carved out of the regional southern regions. And during that time, this map also reflects all of the conflicts that had arisen during that time that can be related to the struggles of different ethnic groups trying to claim land and have their own territory, in order essentially to unlock a lot of the benefits that the Constitution promises. However, they could only do so by using ethnicity, and this ultimately really creates a breeding ground for conflict. And so when looking at this provision in the Constitution, what needs to be considered is that there needs to be an emphasis on consensus building. Should these provisions be amended, they should create or insert provisions that allows different ethnic groups to actually come together. They should perhaps look at different criteria that are not just solely based on ethnicity in order to overcome these challenges and focus more on fostering peace as opposed to creating an environment where the different ethnic groups are incentivized to fight against one another, even internally, because as you can see, what is happening in Ethiopia is now is that new ethnic groups are being formed because they are fracturing, because they also want access to these resources and they are incentivized to do so. So that is really the crux of my research thus far, especially for this chapter. Very summarized for this short presentation, but thank you so much for your time and consideration, and I hope to take questions. Any
Thanks,
questions?
Nejat.
Thank you.
Very interesting. An area I don't know about the others, but that I definitely don't know that much about. Are there any questions for Nejat by anyone? I think just a short, maybe just more of a comment is it's interesting for me just how this is something that you can trace in other countries as well. It's I don't know if you see any parallels, Nejat, between your research in Ethiopia and the work you're doing here in South Africa. Maybe just a short comment.
Yes, of course. I mean, in Africa specifically, ethnicity seems to stand out as one of the key areas of conflict that keeps on popping up over and over again. Not maybe unlike how Europe in its beginning phases was heavily focused on religious conflict. However, luckily and fortunately for South Africa, after apartheid, there was a heavy emphasis on unity and inclusion, and they did not go down the route of institutionalizing ethnic federalism, which I believe could have been a disaster. Insofar as South Africa has a lot of challenges, that has not necessarily been one of them. So I do also find a lot of inspiration from other federal countries, such as Switzerland, who does have federalism, and they also have distinct regions based on what different languages that the people speak. But I think that the way that they've been able to incorporate it into their countries, because it is based on heavily on consensus building, for example, their procedure for creating new states doesn't only require a majority referendum in the region that wants to secede, but also on a national referendum before they can even be incorporated as a new state in the country. So what that does is that these politicians, and as I call them sometimes, ethnopreneurs, are not given the leeway to have a lot of vile rhetoric. They need to tune their rhetoric in a way that is able to be perceived by the entire nation. So they can't, be so exclusionary and hateful and spout a lot of violence. Otherwise, they will not be able to achieve their goals. So that really helps temper a lot of conflict, and it actually promotes working together, and it promotes consensus building, and it promotes having to develop political policies that is beneficial not only to your ethnic group, but you can also market it to other ethnic groups so that they're willing to vote for you. So I do think that's a really important thing, and that's what I want to bring through in my research as well.
Thank you so much. Very important work, and well done to you. Continue the work that you're doing. Excited to see how your research progress. Our next presenter is Dr. Wendell Nortje, also from the law faculty. Wendell, while you're busy sharing your presentation, I'll also ask you if possible, if you can switch on you are switched on, yes, so we can we can see you. The presentation is on gender-based violence in South African universities towards implementing governmental, regional, and international visions. Wendell is a senior lecturer at the Department of Criminal Justice and Procedure at the Faculty of Law He's a member of the African Center for Transnational Criminal Justice, the SAPS University Forum, as well as the Public International Law Research Group, hosted by the University of the West of England in Bristol. He's a journal editor of 4 law journals. He teaches law of criminal procedure, advanced criminal law, and anti-money laundering law. He has over 25 peer-reviewed publications. His most recent focuses on the prevention of gender-based violence in South Africa. Thanks, Wendell. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. van der Berg. Appreciate it. And I just want to also thank the university for accepting my abstract, especially the DVC Research Office, DVC RNI, and also the Research Office. Thank you so much. So I won't be long. This is, of course, for me, a paper that I've only done research on for the last, I think, 2 weeks. So I'm still digging and looking at the report. So what's really important, of course, Dr. Chinian and the co-presenter mentioned it earlier, that we have gender-based violence in South Africa, and it's a scourge. So it's a huge problem. We must talk about it, and I think it's important that we do at these seminars and workshops and webinars, that we really do focus on it. For example, my paper focuses specifically on GBV in universities, educational institutions as well. I did some research and I saw the first quarter of 2024-2025, so this is now like June to August, we had 966 women who were murdered and 314 children. This is now throughout the country. And of course, this is shocking. So this is now throughout South Africa. Now, in educational institutions, this can now be schools, this can be universities, and so on, pre-primary. There are also many murders and rapes. For example, in 2023 alone, there were 54 murders and 290 rapes in our universities and schools throughout the country. So this is a shocking statement or figure or stat. And then most recently, most people will be aware, they saw the video at South Point last year where a UWC student, husband stabbed his wife. And the case is still ongoing. I think I also heard one of the prosecutors say at the court that she actually wanted to withdraw the charges. Not a good thing. But at least now we've mechanisms built in place now where even if she wants to withdraw the charges, the NPA will still pursue with that conviction, but they still need the prosecution, but they still need her to come and testify, of course. So then why am I doing this research is because in February 2024, the task team that was appointed by the Minister of Higher Education at that time, still also Science and Innovation, appointed this task team to look into the aspects of gender-based violence at our universities, but also sexual harassment and harm. So it's not just focusing on necessarily on women, basically because we don't have any children on campus, but on women but also on sexual harassment. So it's also staff, but as well as harm. So it focuses on various aspects, but I'll mainly focus on GBV on campus. It's a quite lengthy report, which I haven't read all. So it's 144 pages. And what I basically will do in my paper is I will analyze it. But I will also analyze it in line with South African regional and international visions, and that's where the SDGs and Agenda 2063 comes into play. So why did we have this report? It's because JCS and Uyinene was murdered back in 2019. Now, almost a few months after that, the minister decided he needs to appoint this task team. So it's unfortunate that something had to happen as bad as this for that reaction to take place. Sometimes we are not proactive enough. And that's, of course, where African Police Service must also play a huge role on our campuses. I'm also part of the SAPS University Forum, representing the university, and we've been talking about GBV on campuses for years. Unfortunately, we now have this report, but something needs to happen. We need to see results. We need to see policies in place. This is fortunately now a good step in the right direction that we have this report. So it analyzed that the task team analyzed policies and processes in place at all the public universities in the country. And the report, then of course, identifies various gaps. They make various recommendations throughout this report, and a few of them are that there must be communities of practice, that the universities must come together, there must be complaint mechanisms and support systems built into our systems, safety and security infrastructure, governance and accountability, academic corruption and gendered abuse of power. There must be more focus on that, because we have seen where lecturers, for example, abuse their power, and they have, for example, sexual relationships with students to benefit themselves. And of course, that is a huge issue which probably is kept silent often. Then, so what must then happen is, but the report also speaks about this, there must be a line where, or at least a whistleblowing line where these victims can go to and talk about these issues. Because obviously if they go to the police, or if they go to any other channels, that might not always be the best step for them to do, or they might feel victimized twice if they do that. So this is a very fragile, of course, aspect of gender-based violence of our campuses. How do they actually react when a thing like this happens to them? It's obviously more pronounced at schools, because then you have a child, it's worse then. Then in terms of other recommendation is funding and resourcing must be looked at in academic interventions and the development of a knowledge and practice base, but also in awareness raising. So all of this speaks towards how can we actually educate our students on campus to fight and combat gender-based violence, but not just only I would think only the student, but also the staff as well. Because what we learn on campus, yes, we learn a lot, and there's a lot of knowledge sharing on campus, but do we actually take that home? And that's, for me, that's where the problem actually lies, is at our homes, in our social structures, at homes, in our communities, because that's unfortunately where most gender-based violence is being committed. But that person who, perhaps a student that does commit gender-based violence off campus, can actually also bring that onto campus. If he, for example, stays at a residence, if he might have a long night at the barn, for example, drinking out, and then things can happen afterwards. There's also a lot of course, violence taking place at the train station in that area, South Point, and that must be addressed by SAPS urgently. Then lastly, also advocacy and interventions for social change. So this report, I criticize the report based on the simple fact that it only refers to the Declaration of the Elimination of Violence Against Women. That's the only international policy it refers to, or declaration it refers to. It doesn't refer at all to the United Nations SDGs, to the African Agenda 2063, as well as the National Development document that we have, 2050. So this is a huge gap, according to me, in terms of this report, because they do have a definitional section in this report, but it's only one page, and it only refers to the declaration. So how can we as a university, in terms of the United Nations Security Generals, I say that universities must fulfill this role where we must educate citizens and galvanize people to come together. How can we say that if we have a report that doesn't even refer to the SDGs or African Union Agenda 2063. How can we develop our policies against the gender-based violence if we don't really focus on the international visions? So that for me is a problem. That's what I will criticize in this paper. But of course, I will also look at what this report does well and not. But in the research question, there's clear for all, to what extent should national, regional, and international visions inform the fight against GBV at South African universities? I think also there's maybe some side journal articles that I can also write coming out from this discussion. So I must just be careful not to focus on too many issues in this specific journal article. Then second last slide, I do focus then on Goal 5 and Goal 6. Goal 5, gender equality of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 16 refers to have strong institutions, that it must be peace and justice. Our university is an institution and it must be strong. If we have gender-based violence on campus, that is not a strong institution. That is an institution where you have violence, you have trauma, and that is not a place where you want our students to be. So especially for females, and you of course, they are disproportionately affected by GBV. So we need to address this in order to ensure that our institutions are strong institutions. Then I also look at AU Agenda 2063, aspirations 4 and 6, which speaks towards, let's get it here, a peaceful and secure Africa, aspiration 4, and then also an Africa where development is people-driven, especially for its women and youth. So it places a high relevance on women and youth. And I think that's something that needs to be included in the specific report that was written by the task team. And then lastly, also National Development Plan 2030 actually refers to Chapter 12, and it looks at establishing safer communities. And that's again something that the report doesn't necessarily refer to, and also the effect that gender-based violence has on our communities surrounding us, Belhar, etc. All these communities around us. We must understand that we play a big role as a university in these communities around us, and I don't think we realize that. And what happens on campus also has an impact outside our communities. There was a student stabbed and killed a few months ago. The report that does speak about harm at the universities, and that didn't even take place on campus, but it took place at the campus residence, which should be addressed by this report and future when we're looking at implementation of this report. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. I would like, please, any questions or comments? I am looking forward to them. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendell. Any questions from there's no questions in the chat. Does anyone just looking for hands? You can maybe just nothing. I really like your dedication and your passion for this, Wendell, and I think if there's someone that can kind of take up the torch and run with it, it's you. So thank you for that. I know you said you kind of just beginning to write this now, and that it's kind of what you're looking to progress towards. So really looking forward to seeing what this will yield, and thank you for your work. Thank you for the important work that you are doing. There's a question. Thank you for the work that you oh wait, let me just go back to the chat. It's from Jane. Thank you for the work you do with SAPS. It wasn't very clear how well are South African universities integrating regional and international standards on gender-based violence into their policies and practices. What challenges do they face in this process?
Thank you so much. I think it is a challenge because simply they are not addressing it. So to answer the first part of the question, when you look at the task team in the report, it does not look at international, regional, and national standards. That's the first issue. And why do they not refer to it? I don't know. And that's something that I will criticize in the article in the paper that I will write. It is something that needs to be addressed because United Nations Sustainable Development Goals speaks about we taking action against all this trauma that we are facing, all this violence that we are facing. Goal 16 should actually be goal 1. Because if we have violence, if we have murder, if we have conflict, we cannot actually end poverty, end hunger. We need to focus on that also. As it must be a very important goal for us as societies, as a country, as South Africa. We need to eradicate crime. It's a huge issue in our country. And if we're not going to focus on international regional policies, then we are not looking at sustainable development. So we must think about that. How can we strengthen our programs that we currently have and looking at better programs, better policies? We should refer to these international policies and conventions, which are currently not. And I don't know why. So what challenges? I don't know. Hopefully I will find out.
Thanks, Wendell. Thank you for your presentation and for the good work. Our next presenter is Ms. Stefina Malachi. Are you, just checking if you're there, Stefina? I know Stefina had some problems with the presentation. Just seeing, Stefina, are you with us? Just quickly look in the chat. I see you there, Stefina,
Yes,
so maybe
I
if you
am
can
here.
share.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. You can, while you start sharing your presentation, I'm just quickly going to introduce you. The presentation is on a qualitative study of the challenges and opportunities for women in the Olympic movement in South Africa. Stefina Malachi is a certified recreation and leisure provider and emerging researcher completing a MPhil Sport for Development at UWC. Her research focuses on women's challenges and opportunities in the South African Olympic movement. She's supervised by Prof. Marion Keem and Prof. Tamara Schaffer. She's part of the University of Venda's Volleyball Club, assisting with volleyball, and a secretary for the Vembe Volleyball Association in Limpopo. Thanks, Stefina. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Is everything in order?
Yes, you can maybe try and put it on presentation mode if you can, and then proceed.
Okay, let me. is it doing?
Not yet, but I think in this sake of time, I think we can just proceed. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. As stated, my name is Defina Malachi, and I'll be taking you through my qualitative study of the challenges and opportunities of women in the Olympic movement in South Africa. My study is aligned with SDG 5, which talks about gender equality, and SDG 10, which talks about reduced inequality. It aligns because I'm going to be exploring the gender equality that is there in sport and also try and offer possibilities to address the gender inequalities that are there in sports through local and global leading sports forums. I am still busy with the studies for my master's, so I don't have results yet, but I'm just taking you through the background or the introduction. First, I believe we have to all understand what an Olympic movement is. And according to the Olympics 2018, they said that an Olympic movement is a collective effort of organizations, stakeholders, and athletes to honor or promote the values and goals of the Olympic Games. And it is governed by the International Organizing Committee. As we all know that women are subjected to discrimination and unfair treatment in sports. So this happens also in the Olympic Games. The father of the Olympic Games, Pierre de Coubertin, who also initiated or brought back the modern Olympic Games in 1896, made sure that women formed no part of the Olympics because he and his colleagues believed that a woman's place is only in the kitchen and nowhere else. And it was during the second Olympic Games that we saw appearance of women. And out of all the athletes that were there, 997 that were there, only 22 were females, and they were allowed to participate in 5 of the sports that were there. And even so, they were allowed to participate. An athlete by the name of Margaret Abbott managed to win, she's an amateur golfer, managed to win a medal, but instead of getting a medal, she got a porcelain bowl, while the male counterpart got medals. So this goes to show that inequality goes a long way back, and it has always been there. And then as the Olympic Games progressed, we saw a number of women participating, but the numbers were not as many as you would hope, because men did believe that women are not supposed to be in competitive sports and they don't know how, or they are not as competitive. We see countries like Qatar, Brunei, and India refusing their women to participate in the Olympic Games because women are not supposed to be there, and because of the kind of attires that are worn during the games. But then all that changed during 2012 Olympic Games, where countries like Qatar managed to send a few women, but then they were not convinced that women can participate and do well as men. And then when we come to South African Olympic movement, the first appearance that South Africa made in the Olympic movement was during the 1904 Olympic Games. And there were no women present. As you can see on the picture on the left-hand side, 3 men, Len Taonyane, Jan Mashiane. Those were the first participants from South Africa that participated. And women only made, or South Africa allowed women to start participating in Olympic Games during the 1920 Olympic Games. And we see the likes of Nash Blanc, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name correct, being the first woman in South Africa to participate. And unfortunately, she was eliminated early in the competition, which resulted that in 1924, when South Africa went back to the Olympic Games, women were not allowed because of the early elimination that happened. From the 1900s, when South Africa started competing till 1956, South Africa only managed to send 12 female athletes to the Olympic Games. And it was then seen in 1960, where it was banned from participating in the Olympic Games because of the apartheid racial policy segregation. Looking at the problem for this research study is that, as I've indicated, that we all know that women are discriminated against in the sports fraternity. They are seen as soft and weak, and they have to work 2 times hard in order to prove themselves to maybe counterparts, managers, and also fans. So there is a need for me to conduct this study because I wanted to find out what are the challenges that are there and what are the opportunities that are offered to women in South African Olympic movement. Yes, there may be transformation charters and other feminist theories going on, but are we following them? Are we closer to reaching the policy goals, or are we walking in the right direction to try and achieve what is written in the transformation charter about women and sports? I'm also doing this study because it will help, or it will assist all the athletes that are in the Olympic movement in South Africa, the SASCOC, which is the NOC of South Africa, coaches and managers, to know the challenges that the female athletes or the women in the Olympic movement are facing. And also to help and prevent the kind of discrimination and also the sexism that is going on in the Olympic movement. And this study will also provide a picture of where we are going as a country in terms of gender equality and discrimination. And then, as I've indicated, the aim is to explore and assess the challenges and opportunities of the South African women in the Olympic movement. And then I want to know what the challenges are for the South African women in the Olympic movement, and also what opportunities they are offered, be it a coach, an athlete, or a manager, anyone who's involved in the Olympic movement. That's what I want to find out from the study. And then this is some of the literature that I will review on the study, looking at the opportunities and the challenges and the history also, and the current status of women in the Olympic movement. I will employ the qualitative research method, and this is an exploratory study because I'll be exploring the challenges and also the opportunities of women in the Olympic movement. Sorry. I will use a purposive sampling for this study, and I will employ the semi-structured interview questions because I already know my participants and I be handpicking them. So because of the geographical barriers, I'll be using Google Meet, Microsoft, or Zoom, whatever that will be feasible for my participant. And the interviews, I'm estimating that they'll take about 30 to 40 minutes. And as a researcher, I'll have to adhere to the UWC guidelines and ethical requirements. I've already acquired the certificate, so I'm about to begin the data collection process. And all my participants will be let know that I'll be using pseudonyms to protect their identity, and also they'll be signing consent forms before we start. And also I'll let them know that if they wish to not participate anymore, they're free to do so without any fear. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you to start concluding if possible.
No, thank you, I'm done.
Is this your last slide?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to ask all the presenters just to quickly switch on your cameras. We're a little bit behind time. So just seeing is there any questions for Stefina? I know that you kind of just a quick question. Approximately how many people do you plan to interview?
Around 10 to 12 participants, depending on who are at the moment.
And okay, thanks. Any other questions to our panelists that we didn't cover? Any comments or questions? Thanks from Nandipa is just saying, looking forward to the study. you mentioned that you know your participants. Can you please clarify who your participants are? That's just to Stefina.
Oh, okay. I will not be mentioning names, of course, but when I said I know my participant, I meant I will be talking about all the women involved in the Olympic movement, be it coaches, officials, or athletes.
Thanks. Thanks a lot for that clarity. There's another question from Jane. My question to Nijat: how does Ethiopia's constitution balance the right to self-determination with national unity? Are there specific legal mechanisms in place to address internal secession? And then there's a second part. I don't know if you want to deal with the first part first, Nijat, and then the second. The second part is, with a surge in demand for internal secession, does Ethiopia's ethnic federalism influence the secessionist sentiments among different groups? Nijat, did you get that? Nijat doesn't seem to. Maybe Jane, I'll ask Nijat if it may be that her sound is not working. She can maybe just respond to you in the chat. Nijat, are you there? I can see on the screen, but there's no sound. Maybe Nijat, if you can respond to Jane, because we need to move on. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting first session. Thanks to all the presenters and for the wonderful work that you're doing in this field. Looking forward to seeing what comes from it. I know some of the studies are still kind of being developed. So well done for the good work. Keep it going, and we'll keep our eyes on you for what's coming from this. Thanks. We'll now go to our next session, which is session 4. I hope all the presenters are here to join us. We have this session. Session 4 is on technology, 4IR and digital transformation and the emerging economies. So we kind of going from human rights, poverty, and social justice to technology and digital transformation and emerging economies. Welcome to our next speakers. Our first speaker for this session is Mr. Gert van Lille. Gert, you are here. Hello, Gert. While you're busy sharing your presentation, I'll just introduce you. Just a reminder that you have 10 minutes, and after 8 minutes, I will just switch on my camera just to give you a nudge to say that you have 2 minutes left. And then for our for people in the session, please pose your questions in the chat if you have any questions to the presenters or afterwards. Gert van Lille is driven to discover methods of enhancing the productivity of Saccharomyces cerevisiae. You're going to have to help me with a pronunciation. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, an important microorganism used in a variety of industries, such as the biofuels or pharmaceutical industry. Gert is a dedicated PhD candidate under the supervision of Prof. Rian Den Haan and Prof. Marla Trindade at UWC. His research is focused on enhancing the longevity of S. cerevisiae to optimize productivity. This could improve industrial processes that rely on yeast. He's committed to biotechnology through his innovative research. Gert, over to you.
Thank you so much. So Yes, my research is the prolonging the lifespan of Saccharomyces cerevisiae as a strategy to improve biofuel production. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is also known as baker's yeast. If anyone has baked before, it's actually a microorganism that produces the carbon dioxide that increases the bread dough. But we mainly use it to produce biofuels, and if we can improve it, we should improve biofuel production. So yeah, let's start trying to. There we go. Okay, so first I'd like to quickly talk a bit about aging. I'm sure all of you are familiar with some gray hairs or back pains, or you know the signs. So there has been studies trying to improve aging, and they found various ways. Some of the common ones are to just eat some more greens that contains a substance that improves longevity, as well as the wine drinkers. It also improves longevity if you eat some grapes or drink some wine, and additionally calorie restriction. Now this is for us, but I want to focus on yeast longevity. But yeast has been used as a model organism to study longevity, which then can spill over to results that we can use as well. So to produce biofuels, we used Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the yeast, to produce alcohol. It takes in sugars and converts it to alcohol, which we can then use as a biofuel, which is an important renewable fuel source that can be supplement the fossil-based fuels. So it's environmentally friendly, which is good. Now, in yeast, since yeast is a unicellular organism, compared to us, we have multiple cells. It has a different type of aging. It has the normal chronological aging, which we are used to, aging over time. Additionally, also has replicative aging, which is the amount of offspring it can produce in its lifespan. And as the yeast grows older, some compounds accumulate, and we'd like to refer to them as aging factors. They are detrimental to the yeast's life, so they become less productive over time. And we want to keep that productivity to produce the compounds that we would like to increase biofuel production. So there are some benefits to increasing yeast lifespan. The first one is genetic stability. So when we would genetically engineer the yeast to have different traits, which would then improve biofuel production. But after many generations, the yeast might kick out the genetic modifications. So if you can extend its lifespan, you can essentially increase the amount of the generational time. So you would have less generations for the same period of time, which means it's less likely to kick out the genetic modifications that you made to the yeast. And then we're hoping to extend productivity. If you can have a yeast that's younger for longer, it should be more productive for longer periods of time, which is very beneficial, especially on an industrial scale, to reduce costs. Since you are scaling up when you're working in the industry, any small percentage in reducing cost has a big influence on the cost that you can set on savings. And the older yeast cells are more adapted to stressful environments. So if you can possibly rejuvenate the cell while keeping this adaptation, it'll be very advantageous. So there's various ways to increase yeast lifespan. These are just the general ones that I looked at. You can either delete or add a gene that increases lifespan by reducing these aging factors that accumulate, or you can mimic calorie restriction. So calorie restriction is a well-known way to increase lifespan across a variety of model organisms. It essentially means reducing the amount of available food sources. So if you can trick the yeast into thinking that there's less food available, it should live longer. And then epigenetic manipulation. Epigenetics is essentially you have your genetic gene code, and then it's manipulations you can make on the outside of it. So I'm specifically going to look at adding genes that could reduce aging factor accumulation and increase yeast lifespan, because it's the easiest way and the simplest and quickest, essentially. So the aims of the project is to engineer Saccharomyces cerevisiae to have a longer lifespan, and then to determine its effect on heterologous expression levels. Heterologous expression is essentially when you engineer the yeast to produce a product that it does not normally produce. And we can use this to look at its metabolic function, its productivity. So if you can, if you see that these levels are high, then you know it's going to be very active even when it's older. So how would we do this? Firstly, we would look at all the literature that's available and look for well-known genes that increase yeast lifespan. Once you've found these genes, you would take them and genetically modify the yeast to have these genes incorporated into their genome. And then additionally, you would also want to incorporate a reporter protein, which is essentially just a protein that we can assay and get like a quantitative result. And then you can see what levels, what happens to the levels of this reporter protein when you do a different genetic modification, such as increasing the lifespan. So then we just simply do a heterologous protein assay, and then we can clearly see what the activity levels look like. And lastly, we would do a viability assay to see how long the yeast will live, or essentially the viability of the yeast after we genetically modified. So here's a few articles that we found to increase yeast lifespan. The SIR2 gene is a gene that we found that has been shown to increase its life. And again, here you can see there's a slight increase. And a LAG2 gene is another gene that we selected. You can see an increase in lifespan, survival time, and lastly, the HCM1 gene also showed an increase in lifespan. All these are very slight increases, so we are going to, So we genetically modified the yeast to have these longevity genes as well as the reporter protein, and we did an assay to see what levels the reporter protein is affected and how. And this is what we found. You can see here that the darker colors on the right, which is the yeast that has the longevity genes in, there seems to be a trend after 5 days at least to have a higher activity levels, which could indicate a higher biofuel production as well. These are still preliminary results, and we are going to still look at different techniques to improve on it. And at day 14, you can also see that even though the two in the middle seem to not be as high, the LAG2 on the far right seems to still show a bit of higher activity, which is good. Now, why is this important? Because heterologous expression is used in a wide variety of industries. Basically, if you're working with the yeast and there was some genetic modification to produce heterologous protein, if you can improve productivity in general, you should be able to improve productivity of those as well. These include insulin productions, enzymes used in vegan cheese, enzymes used in lab-grown meats, any alcoholic beverages that we use, biofuels also use alcoholic fermentation. So thus improving yeast productivity in general is very beneficial, and we're hoping to improve productivity by increasing yeast lifespan. And that is the aim of my. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Gert. Appreciate that. We have a question from Dr. Maedwa. Let me just go there. Dr. Maedwa just wants to know, has the presenter developed any mechanism of cell cycle control of yeast showing the chemical activity in increasing lifespan? Is there computational simulation data to compare with the experimental? I hope that makes sense to you because it doesn't make any sense to me. Gert, your sound is off.
Sorry.
Did you get the question?
I think I understand the question. Let me just read it once more. Yeah. So if you mean by cell cycle control, do you mean the replication of these? Because then you can look essentially at the initial readings at day 5 or day 6 compared to day 14. Day 14, you should have more cell cycles. And chemically, we look at the endoglucanase activity. So if you look at my slides, so yeah, so this would be day 5, and then day 14 you would have had already a lot more cell cycles, and they would be in the 8 or I don't know how many generations, and then you can see the chemical activity that is being produced. I hope that answers your question, or did I misinterpret the question?
Dr. Maidwa, if you does that answer your question? I'm not getting a response. I think so. Okay, thank you for that. Maybe engage with the presenter. We are running a little bit behind, so I'm going to ask you to stop your sharing your slides, and for our next presenter, Dr. Faiza Khan, to please join us.
Thank you.
Dr. Khan is going to present on leveraging AI chatbots for mental health. Dr. Faiza Khan is a student affairs practitioner with over a decade of experience in higher education, holding a PhD in social work. She excels in conceptualizing, designing, and implementing student affairs programs and is an experienced facilitator and trainer. She has taught at the University of the Western Cape and supervises postgraduate students. She has served on various NGO boards and previously worked as a director in an NGO focusing on crime prevention. Passionate about social justice, her work advocates for gender rights and the elimination of violence against women and children, with research highlighting disparities in higher education. Thanks, Faiza. Over to you.
Hi, thank you so much. I also have with me my co-presenter, Professor Matete Madiba, DVC SDS. And then our co-researcher, Mr. Nathan Kayser, is also in the room. And today, our presentation is titled Leveraging AI Chatbots for Mental Health Support. We're drawing some insights from our case study at the University of the Western Cape. I've got Prof. Matete in the room, and she's going to be presenting the first few slides. Prof, over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone in the room. We are looking at the adoption of a chatbot, an AI chatbot for mental health at UWC. And I'm just going to share with you the background and basically answer the question, why did we get to the adoption? But one of what the big things that we are trying to do is, alongside the adoption, we decided to go on a longitudinal research project to monitor and evaluate our adoption. The reasons why we had to consider it's because there are so many challenges when it comes to mental health, and even the way that we are trying to manage it. I'm not going to mention everything else, but when you think about COVID, with all of what it brought our way, one of the things was that it elevated mental health, I guess, to the right place. It gave many others a voice to help us understand how widespread challenges around mental health are, but also in our universities. And because of that, we know that the needs of our staff and students when it comes to mental health are many, and we know that for students and even for staff for EAP services, but for students more, the waiting list to access the services, the face-to-face services that we have, are too long, and the turnaround time is not the way that students would want, but also those who are looking for services, they do not want to be waiting for too long. So there are studies that have been conducted in terms of the challenges that we experience. We know that the levels of anxiety and depression are very high. We know that the numbers of those who've contemplated suicide within the higher education sector, we know that the numbers are high. We also know that the numbers and the stats are also high for students, but also staff who show clinical trauma. So with all of these challenges, how do we then talk to the challenges as we have them? We do have face-to-face ways of delivering services, and that is far from enough. The face-to-face services do not come close to dealing with the challenges that we have. I want us to move to the next slide. So at UWC, we ended up doing our research, and after searching and engagement, we then went through institutional processes and adopted WISER as an AI-supported chatbot to attend to the mental health challenges that we have. Amongst others, it avoids 24/7 accessibility, which you can get with face-to-face services. It allows us to scale up, to scale wide, and to scale deep. So everyone who has access to the app, who's provided with access, can make use of WISER anytime, anywhere. And we are here talking both staff and students. The one powerful feature that WISER is bringing is, alongside what it does, it also advances mental health literacy, which we all need. It's not just for those who are already suffering with a number of mental health challenges. To sustain our mental health, we all need good mental health literacy, and WISER is very good in helping with us. And comparatively, it is cost effective. It can provide early intervention and avoid, the crisis state, but it also provides anonymity and privacy, and so it creates a level of trust for those who pay the price of learning how to use and who ends up enjoying the benefit. I just want to say, as a digital system, it compares, in terms of its need and use, it compares very well to many other systems that we've come to be so dependent in higher education. For example, no university can operate now without a learning management system. And our suspicion is, as we move forward, no university will choose or opt to continue to operate without thinking about this digital system for mental health in one form or the other, because it is really a game changer in terms of providing the services that are needed. As we are thinking about mental health, we need to be reminded that there's links directly to SGD3 in terms of good health and well-being, and the goal is about ensuring that healthy lives and then promote well-being of all people for all ages. So at UWC, WISER is meant to support all ages. And I just want to say, the work that the Wealth the World Health Organization is doing is also reminding us that well-being, especially when we talk mental health, appears on a complex continuum from just sustaining it well to the challenges. And in understanding this goal, the message that we get is, in the absence of mental health, all the other goals are going to be undermined. And that is why we are convinced that attending to mental health unlocks productivity in all the other areas. And for the university, we'd really like to take the scholarship route as we implement the use of WISER. Over to you, Dr. Khan.
Thank you, Prof. So, as Prof has said, we are currently looking at a 5-year case study around the WISER app and a research project. And so for this particular part of the research project, we've kind of employed a mixed methods approach where we've combined the use of dashboard data analysis. So we've looked at the secondary data from the chatbot platform dashboard to help us gain insights into the user patterns, engagement levels, and outcomes. And we've also conducted both a user survey for those who have used WISER, but also a non-user survey so that we could understand the feedback from students and staff and understand their perceptions, experiences, and satisfaction with the chatbot survey. So this presentation is going to share with you our very, very preliminary findings. So since the launch in September 2023, we've had 3,551 users that have onboarded, resulting in a 13.85% overall take-up. Of these, 956 users downloaded the app, while a significant number of users use the application via a widget interface. Students comprise the majority of users, and we're looking at 62.9%, while staff accounted for almost 11%. The app shows strong engagement, with users averaging about 6.83 sessions per person, and each person spending about 26.77 minutes per session. In terms of the adoption across faculties, we have, of the 3,209 students that have used the app, we see that the top 5 faculties where students have adopted and used the app is arts, followed by EMS, science, law, and then CHS. We've also had staff, there are 342 staff that have used the app, and we look at 209 support staff and 133 academic staff. So just reflecting on some of the user insights, we see that the frequently discussed topics relates to work, so 38.8%, and 19% to education. 49.15% of users screen positive for depression, for symptoms of depression, and 59.44% screen positive for anxiety. About 62.7% of users who began an intervention tool completed it, and the most commonly utilized tools were those focusing on reducing anxiety. User feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, with 93.4% of participants rating the WISER app as helpful. Many expressed feelings of optimism and were more positive after engaging with the chatbot. Important to say that the app uses evidence-based cognitive behavioral techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, breathing apps, yoga, motivational interviewing, goal setting, etc., to help the student to build a mental health resilience. So if we look at this graph, we see that text-based motivational chat was the most frequently used tool within WISER, followed by goal setting, self-assessment tools, and mood tracking.
Faiza, you're gonna have to start concluding. Thanks.
Okay, so just very quickly in terms of the ease of the app, we see that 70% of the students found that the app was quite easy to use. In terms of peak periods, we see that a lot of students students and staff have used the app for mental health related issues. Secondly, people have used it for managing overall day-to-day stress. And then also top key in this is preparing for exams and writing exams. In terms of this slide, the slide presents a very clear story about the challenges in gaining trust for AI mental health applications, especially from non-users. In the first pie chart, the majority of respondents displayed a lack of confidence in the tools, with 31.4% not trusting AI mental health support at all, and 27.5% trusting it only a little. While 33.3% of respondents are moderately trusting, only a minority have strong trust in AI mental health tools. The second pie chart emphasizes the gap in the trust, with nearly half of respondents unsure if an AI chatbot can effectively support mental health. Only 23.5% of users believed in the potential effectiveness of this tool. So when we consider the adoption of WISER as part of an integrated mental health and wellness intervention, we also looked at some theories, and the technological acceptance model, TAM, provides us with a useful lens to understand and address the trust and adoption challenges we're currently seeing in the slide. So TAM suggests that there are two key factors that influences a user's decision.
Can you
to
start?
adopt
Sorry
technology.
to interrupt you, but we need to start concluding. Sorry, we're just running a little bit short on time.
No problem. So, we've seen that students find, or users find the app easy to use. We also see that in terms of improving areas for perceived trust, that we need to start shifting in awareness around the existence of the app and its safety, and help shift the narrative of AI mental health tools, that in-person counseling is not the only effective support tool, and also assure users about confidentiality and address concerns around effectiveness. So this is just some user feedback, which I'm not going to go into, but just saying that despite the fact that we are, grappling with the adoption in terms of getting users to trust the app, we see promising results from WISER. We also see that our data-driven insights from our dashboard and our survey reveal positive and high engagements. We still see this as a scalable solution that could empower students to seek help without the stigma, supporting early intervention and proactive care. And then, of course, the success of a WISER app highlights the potential for wider adoption across South African universities, driving innovation in student support. I thank you. Thank you.
Chair, you muted.
Sorry, sorry, I'm talking away. Thank you very much to the presenters. We've all seen what's being done with the app across campus. Just a question, could the slow rate of adoption be due to human beings still require human interaction to address the issues? Actually, a question I had as well. And is it not part of being human, i.e. humans finding trust in the empathy and understanding by other humans?
Yeah. So I think absolutely. I think that is something that we are starting to address. Is what we also need people to understand is that WISER is not replacing human interaction. It's not designed to replace human interaction. It's not designed to diagnose. But like Prof. Matete highlighted earlier, what it does do is it increases mental health literacy. And it's also an early intervention tool. So, it's something that you can chat to when you're not necessarily in a crisis, but you're struggling with the day-to-day issues of life. So for us, it is part of our integrated wellness strategy, but it doesn't replace face-to-face counseling, although it does ease the burden on the counseling system as it is. Because we do find, obviously, that with the need, we need to start addressing waiting for counseling appointments and so forth. And this is one of the ways of doing this. So it's definitely not intentioned to replace human contact and human counseling, but rather add to a basket of services that are available to students. Prof, I don't know if you want to add.
I wanted to add and say part of our messaging, we need to correct the perception that this is completely AI. It is AI empowered, AI advanced. They are human beings with behind the system who are moderating the conversations, and they are making sure that they become more meaningful and they learn from the input of the users. So it's not completely inhuman where you are just faced with an AI tool. And I think in our messaging, we need to communicate this appropriately.
Thanks, Prof. Just a comment from Selin Kosini. I think this presentation was very interesting and informative. It would be interesting to see if the AI tool could be used to gain data to provide epidemiological insights on the range of mental health challenges among staff and students to inform interventions, which I think is a very relevant comment. And from Jane, thank you, presenters. Indeed, AI chatbots can provide 24/7 support, which will make mental health resources more accessible to people who might otherwise struggle. So based on the survey findings, are there differences in the effectiveness of WISER based on demographics or the specific mental health issue being addressed? And secondly, what is the reason for the low number of users in dentistry?
So in terms of the low number of students in dentistry, I think we have targeted dentistry to raise more awareness around the app. I think there's been a lot of messaging across campus, but we also, understand that, people need to be shown the success stories of those that have ventured out and used the AI chatbot. So for us, we are certainly going to be targeting the dentistry faculty to increase the uptake of student users in dentistry, but also to understand why it is that they are not using it. And this is why our non-user survey is something that we are quite keen to kind of see. These are preliminary results that we are looking at. So, just a deeper analysis will hopefully help us understand a lot more about why people are not using the app. So that we can look at what we need to do to be able to increase its usability. Prof, I don't know if you want to add anything?
I'm fine, I'm covered.
Thank you so much, presenters, to both of you. Well done on this and the way forward. We will keep our eyes out to see some more findings from you, but thank you very much. Our next presenter is Professor Mornay Roberts-Lombard. Let me just see, Mornay. I know you are in the room.
Yes,
so
I'm here.
You're
I'm
there.
looking
So
at
while
you.
you're busy sharing your presentation, I'll just quickly introduce you. Prof. Lombard holds a PhD in business management. He has authored multiple journal articles in international and local journals. He's an associate editor for the European Business Review and section editor for Acta Commercial Journal, both Scopus Index international journals. He has served as HOD at multiple South African institutions and is currently a full professor in the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship at UWC. He's on the board of International Business Conferences, African Social Science Conference, and currently has 3,249. Let's just make it 3,250 more, to his research works and Google Scholar H-Index 28 and I-10 of 76. Thank you. Over to you, Mornay.
Thank you. I just have to say that sounds very wonderful, but I was told I have to say that as part of the description. So please, it's not something I say because I want to, just something I do because I'm told I have to introduce myself. Thank you very much. I'm talking today about the drivers of consumer willingness to buy local organic food products. I'm sure you all can see my screen, am I right?
Yes.
Good. And living healthy and becoming more healthy has become part of South African lifestyle to a growing extent. And you know, there's been this growing demand for organic food products, particularly in markets that's traditionally been associated not associated with a high demand for these type of products, such as Africa, and South Africa is no exception, of course. And this provides opportunities and challenges also for companies wanting to enter this market and grab this growing potential market segment that shows an interest in a more healthier type of lifestyle. A critical consideration for these companies concerns trust in locally produced foods, and then, of course, how that impacts the interest to buy these type of products, you know, from local producers. There's a rich body of knowledge that exists, there's a rich body of knowledge that exists from developed economies that spells out the bias that organic food consumers have towards locally produced food. It could be a bias, you know, that relates to quality, to image, a perception of, you know, the more expensive imports are, better the quality of food, things that, you know, is not always true. And a notable gap exists in understanding the dynamics regarding the preference of consumers in African markets. And drawing from the social identity theory, the study investigates the influence of dominant consumer values such as patriotism, cosmopolitanism, and ethnocentrism within international marketing on the willingness to purchase locally produced organic foods. And looking at how these factors actually impact trust and how impact willingness to buy locally produced organic food, and then also greenwashing as a form of a marketing mental influence, how that ultimately, you know, also impact this willingness to buy. Organic food has more of a healthy approach. It's much more seen as being more cleansing of the palate and the intestines, and therefore it also has got a health benefit. The proposed model, as you can see, is how customer ethnocentrism, the feeling of Africanism, the consumer patriotism, being very loyal to the country of residence, consumer cosmopolitanism, in other words, are you a globe thinker, how that influences your view of trust in the home country where production takes place, and then, of course, impacts your willingness to buy, and that's moderated by the perceived greenwashing you know, views and images and perceptions that media share and could impact our willingness to buy. A quantitative method was employed. An online survey was administered to 584 South African consumers actively, you know, aligned to organic foods. And structural equation modeling was used to assess the mediation and moderation effects and also the direct effects as proposed by the model that I've just shown. The results reflect intriguing dynamics in the actions between patriotism, consumer cosmopolitanism, and ethnocentrism, elucidating their role in cultivating trust in the home country. And this significantly heightens consumers' willingness to show an indication and an interest to buy locally organic food. Now, if we have a look and we look at this slide, because of my time limit, of course, I cannot always explain everything, but what we did find was that patriotism definitely had an influence on consumer ethnocentrism and cosmopolitanism. What we also did find was that consumer ethnocentrism, consumer cosmopolitanism, and patriotism had an influence on trust. But we didn't find that patronism had an influence on willingness to buy. And that was quite interesting. So that showed us to a certain extent that although you're very loyal to your country and to the values it stands for and wanting to support local products, that you are easily able to shift your decision to buy locally produced products if a product is imported that reflects a better quality or a stronger image in your perception. In terms of mediation of trust between these independent variables and the dependent variable, we did find that the trust in the home country do fully mediate between patronism and willingness to buy. So if there is trust in the home country, trust in the quality, trust in the farming process, trust in the ethical principles applied, you know, in farming and cultivating these organic food products, then there's definitely a stronger intention to be committed to buy these products, even if an imported product does reflect a stronger quality or a better brand image in your mind. That trust still plays a critical role. However, in the case of consumer cosmopolitanism and consumer ethnocentrism, we did find partial mediation. So the shift in terms of, you know, the willingness to buy could be influenced by trust, but there is no certain guarantee that that will be the case when the consumer makes the final decision. In terms of the moderating effect of greenwashing, we did find that with greenwashing moderating the role between consumer cosmopolitanism and willingness to buy, there was no effect. So if a consumer has an international view, they perceive international products to be an extension of their image, that it's better quality, that it reflects a certain type of standing in their mind, that even if the media says negative, share negative information around the products or how it was formed, you will still continue to buy that. But yet with consumer ethnocentrism and trust in the home country, greenwashing does have a moderating influence. So although you are perceived as being very supportive of your country of origin, you know, if there might be information shared that you perceive as not being supportive of the values that you believe in, it could shift you in buying or not buying. And the same with your level of trust in the origin of the product. You know, if greenwashing impacts your perception of trust, it could shift you in either supporting the product locally or not supporting the product locally. The research implications is that the study enhances knowledge of the drivers of trust and materialism and the impact of the latter on consumer willingness to purchase locally produced organic foods. The mediating role of trust was investigated, and the moderating role of perceived greenwashing was also explored. The findings therefore contribute to novel insights into the relationships underpinning consumer preferences for local products, paving the way for a deeper understanding of the complexities associated with domestic organic food consumption in the South African context. And to conclude, the study guides retailers in emerging markets on the mediating roles of trust and materialism and its influence on consumer willingness to buy local organic food products through the application of selected drivers. And it furthermore also emphasizes the relevance of perceived greenwashing on selected relationships. And on that note, I'm saying thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions and I can answer them, I'm more than willing to do so.
Thank you very much, Morné. Any questions from let me just quickly go to the chat. I'm not seeing any questions there. Just a quick one from me. Monet, you mentioned that you did it among about 300 odd
547, I think.
from across, or where what was the population of the sample?
It was across ethnicity, but it was positioned in the Gauteng province of South Africa. Because when we decided on positioning our selected sample, we had to look at consumers that had the financial means to purchase these type of products, that had the interest to do so, and also the lifestyle. And when we started segmenting our respondent group before we selected them, we realized that income does play a role. And that's why at that moment in time, the Gauteng province deemed to be the most suitable geographical location.
Makes sense.
But it's fascinating. I really have to say that we've submitted this now to, we hope our best, it's an A-rated journal for review, because there is such need in our country for this type of research, because everybody researches these commercialized products and brands. But this growing trend that we see, especially in your more upper middle to high income segmented lifestyles, is underexplored. And we need to understand, are they really committed to the local producers, and what drives them to actually support them? Or are they actually saying that, but when it comes to buying, they still support the imported products? That will really help retailers to expand on stocking these products, or to actually just giving up on what they actually stock already in terms of forecasted sales and interest in terms of consumer buying.
Yeah, local.
Yeah, local is always lacking, eh?
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks for sharing. If you can stop sharing your screen, Monet, then I'm going to hand over to our last speaker for this session. Monet, if you can just stop sharing your screen. Let's see. Then, Monet, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. Sorry, I put myself on mute because I don't want to say funny things when I'm trying to stop here.
Okay, well,
can you not stop sharing on your side? Is that not at all possible? Because it only says share on my side, and I don't know.
There we go.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. It was really wonderful to be part of this research week. Thank you for your help. I appreciate it.
Our next presenter is Ms. Magwaza, who will present. Let me just see. Are you with us?
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Yeah, you there. She's an assistant lecturer at DUT, the Center for Education. She holds a master's degree in social sciences, community development, and is currently enrolled for a PhD in human sciences at the University of KZN. Her research interests are in community development, retail development, local economic development, quality higher education, and project management. She's an aspiring academic community worker, and she worked at the University of KZN as an assistant lecturer for the community development department. Over to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Greetings to all. I'll be presenting a paper on the role of formal retail development on local economic development, the case study of Ndwedwe Municipality, and this paper is co-authored with Mr. Lindani Maphumulo. So just to give you a brief background of our study, it is linked with both the national as well as the global imperatives, which we can include the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 8, the African Union Agenda 2063 Goal number 4, which is transformed economies, as well as in South Africa, the National Development Plan 2030, and it is linked with your chapters 3, chapter 4, as well as chapter 6. So it is through these national imperatives where we see the municipalities being committed to actually establishing a setting that would lead to a greater opportunity to, and also to attract local and international investors within the area of Indwet. And also because Indwet municipality is both a semi-rural and township area, which are the second economy areas of South Africa, and they are economically untapped. The shopping centers in these areas are then presented as a symbol of and strategy for development as well as transformation. So retail center in these areas have made them a place of destination of choice. And Duvezi Makigaba makes an example of Umlazi Mega City and Jabulani malls, where, as well as Myandu Mall, where these centers were previously not there, and the emergence of them, they really mean now we are trying to transform the rural areas and trying to bring them into the mainstream economy. So just to give you a picture of what Indwetwe is about, or what Ndwetwe looks like, it is one of the 4 municipalities in Ilembe district in KZN. And its economy is primarily defined by the service sector, which are your people working with or for the government, the informal economic sector, your small and medium enterprises, as well as the public transportation sector. And for the purpose of this study, or for the paper, is that local economy will refer to all the activities that are from a grassroots level and that are community initiatives, because some authors do refer to both local economic development and community economic development as, you know, having the same definition of grassroots level type of initiatives. So we then can't talk about the paper without first, you know, explaining what local economic development is about, and is one of the major approaches of community development, as it fosters both social as well as economic growth in the area. And in South Africa, more specifically, LED is used as a tool for local municipalities to actually adhere to their developmental duty as enshrined in the Municipal Structures Act of 1998. And Indwetwe in this instance is not, you know, you can't separate it from, you know, the Municipal Structures Act, as also in their IDP. They have also committed themselves in developing an economy that is resilient and that creates better or decent jobs in order to, you know, for poverty alleviation in the area. So the study that we are focusing on employed qualitative methodology, where we interviewed 6 informal traders as well as 4 public transportation workers. These people, or these participants, were included in the study because they are the ones who are positively or negatively impacted, you know, by the emergence of the formal retail development within the area. And also we've used the pro-market and or pro-business local economic development as a conceptual framework to actually guide our study. And it is used because it uses more of both top-down approaches to their development. And since it is the local municipalities, you know, that are responsible to follow a pro-market or a pro-business strategy of attracting as well as recruiting bigger businesses, as well as the investors into the community. Hence, we are then looking at it because it's not really your typical grassroots type of development, unlike your pro-poor type of development. So this one uses a more bottom-up because it trickles down from the authority and down to the people. So the findings of the study, you know, suggest that some, you know, participants did mention that they've seen how the emergence of the center has resulted in the youth unemployment reduction through job creations, and also not only direct job creations in the center itself, but also you know, when there are the other infrastructural development where people can actually rent these places for their own small businesses. And in Ndwedwe IDP also, it was evident that the unemployment rates within the youth has also declined from 67% to actually 48% currently. And also the emergence of the retail center has also resulted in rural development, where we see that through the infrastructural development that was previously not there before the center was established. And it is through those physical infrastructures, such as your road, the buildings, and the economic vibrancy that was brought by the retail center within the municipality, that we can then say we can then see the economic development within the area. What is also has been good about the emergence of the shopping center is that it has been able to bring the goods and services closer to the people, and that on its own has been important, as we've seen during the COVID-19 era, where people were encouraged to shop locally. And for the people of Ndwedwe, they didn't have, you know, challenges with accessing goods and services during that time, because they did have within their locality the retail centers where they can go and buy some of their essentials without, you know, experiencing any issues, whereas previously they had to travel to other cities, you know, to get those goods and services. However, the findings also suggested that as much as this development is good, but it's not without critique, because it has led to a lack of most businesses' inclusion in the first, the development process, as well as the operationalization process, where some of the participants did mention that they had no idea about, you know, the development of the center, and thus they couldn't get in, you know, they couldn't get to rent those infrastructural development, which then led to the demise of most of the businesses that couldn't get into this now new economically vibrant environment. So the role of a formal retail development in second economy areas is that, as mentioned before, it does offer employment opportunities as well as to test new business ventures within the area. It also plays a huge role in social development. In community development, it is very crucial that people within the community are able to form relationships and form networks. And it is through these shopping centers where people can meet, or for business, either for business or for social benefits, and they can strengthen the already existing networks or form new relationships within the community. And as mentioned before, it has resulted to the infrastructural development, your roads, electricity, as well as other buildings that are within. And because also the location of the center itself, it is located near the clinics and near the police stations of the area, as well as the social services that are within Ndwedwe area or Ndwedwe town. And as mentioned before, it is not without critique, because the informal sector in rural or township areas have been the backbone of the community's economic development. So when you cripple the informal sector, you are actually crippling the livelihoods of people that are dependent on this sector for their livelihood. And also one of the critique was that because the recruitment of these bigger businesses is done by the local municipality, where people play a smaller role and they don't have the decision-making powers. So the community doesn't have, you know, the community ownership of these retail centers. Is also one of the shortfalls of the development.
I'm going to ask you to start concluding, please, Nkazimbulo.
Okay, so implications for the study is that it's improved the quality of life. You can't talk about community development without talking about how these developments sort of improve the quality of life of the people, as well as to bring rural areas into the mainstream economy. So to conclude, the paper makes recommendation of a more inclusive approach to retail development, through which the environment is healthy for both formal and informal businesses to actually compete, as well as the job security of the informal sector, so that when these two sectors are competing, because the formal sector does have security for their workers, whereas in the informal sector, job security where it lacks. And one of the major statement is for the study is that a retail center is more than just for food security, but it's also pose a model for social, economic, and physical infrastructure. And thus it is so crucial that rural areas are included into the mainstream economy. Oh, thank you. I think that was my last slide.
Thank you very much. Yes, while you can just close your presentation, there is just a comment to say thank you for sharing the case in terms of the relation of formal retail development on local economic development. I'm curious as to what has been the impact of the local economic growth on the plethora of other social economic challenges, such as crime, access to healthcare, and other basic needs and services.
Can I read that question is from?
Selinkosi, it's the last one. We are unfortunately very restricted in terms of our time, so maybe if you can respond to that one, if you can, or maybe take it offline if it's. Are you able to respond?
Yeah, can I take it offline, please, while I look at it in the meantime?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. It'll give you a little bit of time, and then maybe you can just respond in the chat to Selinkosi, just in terms of that question. We have concluded this session. We are a little bit out of time. I would just like all the presenters just to quickly switch on your cameras, just to thank you all for very insightful presentations. It was really an interesting session from all of you. Different perspectives, going from biofield ethnicity to mental health, informal economy, etc. So thank you very much for presenting. We are now concluding this session, and unfortunately there's no time to stretch your legs. We are going straight into the next session. So the presenters for the next session, we are now going from technology for IR emerging economies to net zero transformation and environmental sustainability, nanotechnology and astrophysics. Now, this is an area that I'm probably, can I just ask Nkonzimulo if you can just close your presentation? Maybe just unshare the slides, or if Zinia, if you can maybe assist with that. I don't know if you presented it from your side.
Melanie should be able to. Melanie from her end should be able to stop.
Can you unshare from your? There we go. Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to session 5. As I said, we're running a little bit late, so apologies to the presenters if you've been waiting. But our next session, our first presenter will be Dr. Thembinkosi Maphosa. Are you present? And can you maybe whilst you start sharing your slides, I'll just introduce you. Just seeing if you here. Are you here? Oh, I see you there. So if you start sharing, I'll just quickly introduce you. So Dr. Maphosa recently completed his PhD from the University of the Western Cape. His study focused on improving the standard of living of low-income communities through energy efficiency interventions. His research explored innovative solutions, including the UN Clean Development Mechanism. He holds a master's degree, a BCom honors, and additional qualifications in business management. He published several papers and presented at conferences, and he has various roles, including in the Department of Management and Entrepreneurship and the Department of Finance. His passion extends beyond academia with interest in wall and steel painting as well as cycling. Thembinkosi, just a reminder to all the presenters, after 8 minutes, I'll just switch on my camera so that you know you have about 2 minutes to wrap up. So over to you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, my name is Thembinkosi. As introduced, I'm going to be presenting to you a topic entitled Lessons Learned from a Review of the Kuyasa Renewable Energy Efficiency Clean Development Mechanism Project post-implementation. So the study overview is like from the introduction and contextual background to the methodology, right up to the last section, that is section 8, which is how best can we financially sustain project maintenance and repair activities. This is also a question that, as I also present my study, we should also be thinking about also the answers to that particular question. And to have a brief introduction and contextual background to the study, so I'm going to be presenting on the lessons learned from a project implemented under the Clean Development Mechanism, the CDM, to finance energy efficient interventions in the Kuyasa low-income community, Khayelitsha, Cape Town, South Africa. So the Clean Development Mechanism, it's a financial mechanism which incentivizes developing. I'm just talking in a general perspective. It's a financial mechanism which incentivizes developing countries or developing economies by developed countries through satisfying that they've reduced greenhouse gas emissions. So this also comes at a background of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 7 and Goal number 13, where SDG number 7, it ensures sustainable, also affordable, and access and reliable modern energy for all. SDG 13 allows for an urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And also, even here in South Africa, we've got some renewable energy project policies that also ensures that we come up with projects that allow us in these communities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. But they are also incentivized. There's also some incentivizing mechanism which is also should be put across. And after we motivate that we've reduced some greenhouse gas emissions, there are what we call carbon credits, which are also generated. And these carbon credits, they're mostly meant to finance maintenance and repair activities of most of these renewable energy projects. But also, what is the background of this CDM project? This CDM project saw the retrofitting of 2,309 houses in Kuyasa with solar water heaters, insulated ceilings, compact fluorescent lights, and this is also against background of against literature of Goldman 2010. And also we found out later, even in when we were also doing data collection, we found out that not only did this community receive solar water heaters, insulated ceilings, compact fluorescent lights, but they also received what we call hot pots. Hot pots is also sort of like a mechanism which uses solar rays for it to cook food, like for example, samp or pap using the sun. So those were some of these technologies that were implemented in that particular community. But the major challenge going forward was how do we finance the maintenance of these technologies going forward? Of course, yes, we would like to acknowledge that this project was implemented by the City of Cape Town and also a non-profit organization called South North in that particular community. Again, it was designed also to reap financial benefits through the sale of what we call carbon credits or CREs, or through motivating that this project has reduced greenhouse gas emissions. Then again, what were the major challenges which we also found out through this project? Yes, according to literature, we found out that there were some of the major challenges that were there were the delays and decline in the credit values. That is, for example, when we motivated that there were greenhouse gas emissions in the year 2010, the carbon credits by that time, they were around £20. So we found that they now reduced in that category of energy efficient to about £8, which made it now very difficult for City of Cape Town and South North to finance that particular project. Of course, others might argue that carbon credits have risen. Yes, carbon credits have risen for other categories, for example, projects which are only renewable energy, and other projects which are in the forestry or in the other projects which are saying recycling. In this particular case, why do we call it renewable energy efficiency? It is because it is still having having those technologies depending on Eskom power. For example, these solar water geysers they are still having a sustainability from Eskom. Then what are the other challenges also were that key stakeholders felt left out. For example, Eskom felt left out during the project implementation and also even during the project development itself. There were also high transaction costs, which are involved in the clean development mechanism. For example, monitoring and evaluation costs on especially evaluating whether the project reduced the greenhouse gas emissions by a certain amount. That evaluation process is very, very expensive. For example, the evaluation mechanism were done by an organization called TADNOV, which is a Netherlands organization. So those monitoring evaluation costs were so expensive. And there were also specific organizations which were supposed to carry out the monitoring and evaluation of these particular projects. Hence, we also lob also for alternative financial mechanism so that we can fund the maintenance and renewable energy repairs of these technologies. Of course, yes, we also acknowledge that there was a theoretical framework. We engaged also on the aspects of the sustainability theory, the systems theory, the community engagement theory, and also even the energy access and transition theories. All these theories led us so that we can have an insight on the project beneficiaries and also even on the renewable energy experts. And what were some of the implications of this theoretical framework? We were lobbying that we can have a more guaranteed revenue stream, a repayment plan, a contribution mechanism, or an empowerment plan. Then what are the key findings that we found out from all these three interventions that were there, the solar water heaters, insulated ceilings, compact fluorescent lights? Majority of the project beneficiaries, yes, they acknowledge that they still have these technologies on their households. We also even observed it when we're doing even also data collection. But the major challenge again still lies again on the repair and maintenance of these technologies. As some of these technologies, taking example of the solar water geysers, they are now broken down. Some of them, they are weather dependent. When it is cold, they do not work, hence which is making the residents revert back to paraffin type of warming water. They're still also reverting back even to incandescent light bulbs, which also still motivating the increase in greenhouse gas emissions. Again, we found out also even some of the ceilings, they are now falling off, which is a result of that they are attracting rats, and also there's no lack of maintenance on those activities. We also found out that in these particular communities, there was still a lack of livelihood opportunities. Hence, that is some of the another angle that we could have also even come up with, that these renewable energy projects, they should allow for a long-term livelihood opportunity in terms of training the residents how to repair and maintain their own technologies, which will now reduce a burden on the project developers, even on the government, if they can take that responsibility of repairing their own projects. Then
I'm going to ask you to start concluding, please.
Okay, so what are some of the best practices that we also found out that can also come up as a solution to fund the maintenance and repair of these renewable energy technologies? Was at least to have what we call an availability charge or a prepaid electricity meters. That is, for every token of electricity, every meter token, a certain amount goes towards the maintenance of these technologies. Monetize some of the basic energy grants. We found out that this community, they are given at least 50 units of energy. Why can't we take maybe at least 10 units of that energy technology, of those energy units towards maintenance? Engage energy efficient technology investors, grants from donors, innovative debt funding, financing by banks, green bonds, also allow even for more entrepreneurship activities, so that these communities can also take responsibility of funding their own projects. But however, we still have to deal with issues around disagreements in that particular community, issues around payment methods, which is the safer method for collecting those particular funds in that communities, issues around corruption and crime, conflicts, whether would this community allow some of their energy grants to be monetized and go towards the repair and maintenance of their technologies. So those are some of the recommendations also we found out. Then lastly, I'm saying thank you for this presentation. You've been quite a great audience. The questions are welcome.
Thank you very much for sharing. I'm going to ask everyone to reserve the questions for the question and answer session at the end, to try and win some time. And then if you can just stop sharing your presentation, and we'll go to our next presenter. So our next presenter, let's just see if our next presenter, Dr. Mashawa, are you here? Let me just see. Dr. Nakulanga Mashawa, are you here? Yes, I can see you there. Whilst you start just sharing your presentation, I'll just introduce you. Dr. Mashawa is the head of department for the built environment at Walter Sisulu University and a professional registered candidate quantity surveyor with a PhD in quantity surveying from UJ. She has published 54 articles, supervised over 70 students, and she contributes to research, serves on project steering committees, and acts as external moderator and examiner. She's an active academic and busy with community engagement, having organized career expos, mentoring students, and she also serves on various organizing committees and has applied for NRF rating. Please, can you share your slides? Okay, from Zinia, will no longer, okay, so we will then move to the next presenter. Our next presenter is Prof. Fanelwa. Are you here?
Sorry, Chair.
Yes. Oh, it's Prof.
The
Fanelwa.
apology received was for Prof. Fanelwa, and the recent presenter is currently not in the meeting room. So we are welcome to go ahead with the next presenter after Prof. Fanelwa in the program.
Okay, so Prof. Vanelwa is no longer. Then we with Prof. Robbie Lindsay. Prof. Lindsay, I know you're here. I saw you.
Yes, I'm here. I'm just getting my thoughts together. Awesome.
I'm not sorry that
No problem.
I was
just
rushing.
expecting another few minutes, but let me get ready. I think I should be fine.
I was rushing you. Our first, Dr. Tim Corsi, I was rushing you. I'll just introduce you, Prof. Lindsay.
Okay, no problem.
Prof. Lindsay is an emeritus professor in the Department of Physics and is now the director of the Nanoscience Master's Program, an initiative of the Department of Science and Innovation. The program has its hub at UWC with 3 other universities that form part of this master's program. He obtained a DPhil at Oxford in theoretical nuclear physics, but has research interest that is now in applied nuclear physics and laterally on the possible commercialization of research at South African universities. Prof. Lindsay, over to you.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Right. Well, this is a kind of weird talk. I'm more talking about research rather than specifically things that I've done. As the chair said, I'm involved in the nanoscience program, so I will just explain what that is and then go on to say what are our present challenges and where other people in the university involved in research and with links might be of use to us and where we might be of use to them. Okay, let me just say something about this program. Lots of people on campus don't know about it. This is called the National Nanoscience Postgraduate Teaching and Training Platform. We're looking for a shorter name as it happens. This is a collaboration between 4 universities. The hub is here at UWC, but there are 3 nodes as well, UJ, NMU, and UF Free State. So this is a 2-year program, 9 months of coursework and 15 months of a mini thesis. This is funded by the DSI. They decided about 20 years ago that nanoscience was a nice, new, important research field in which South Africa should play a role. So they gave lots of money to this, to especially places like the CSR and Mintech have done really well out of this. And the idea was that South Africa should get a nanotechnology industry, shall we say, that we shouldn't be just selling our raw materials, but that we should look at some of the more advanced fields and see whether we couldn't play an important role in there and get our knowledge economy going. So it's a really important field, nanoscience. And so the DSI spent a lot of money on it. And as I mentioned there, there was then a shortage of people and they decided to start this training program and they're giving us 18 million rand a year and they spent a lot of money on their nanotechnology strategy. I'll mention later on that it's not been quite as successful as what they'd hoped. Anyway, so there's a coursework section at UWC where the students get trained in the various aspects of nanoscience. They do basic things in various fields so that they get a good overview, and then they do go and they do research at their home institution. The research fields are on nanophysics, which involve things like solar cells and so on, nanochemistry, which involves sensors, clean water, batteries, and so on, and lastly, biomedicine, with there's a strong research group on biomarkers here at UWC and other health testing methods. So as you can see, this ties in very closely with the SGDs. A lot of these research fields play a role in those development goals. Okay, so where are we? Let me just give you an idea of what's happened in the past. I mean, there are lots of positives. We've trained over 250 MSc students in total around all 4 universities. The students get a broad exposure. They go to all the campuses and see the research possibilities there and the instruments available. They visit Mintech and places like that. And in general, it's been a very successful collaboration amongst 4 universities. As you all know, in South Africa, universities don't tend to work together very well, but in this field, it has worked out well because the DSI has been funding it and all the universities have really gained tremendously through this. We also have international links. We get lecturers from abroad that teach on the program. And I think in general, it's been a great experience for most of the students. Some other successes, we have students working in industry, academia, and government. There on the right, you can see in that pie chart that about 30% of the students, 32% go into industry as far as we can tell. We try to do a survey of all past students. And of course, like, as usual, we didn't get all of them, but we got a fair chunk. And that seems to be the situation. About 11% go into government. Those are jobs such as Medical Research Council, SAPS, where I think they could be using their research as well, you know, forensic laboratories, places like that. And as I say, 32% goes into industry, which we think is pretty good. But as I will explain, DSI is a bit disappointed with that. Some specific success stories. There is Professor Ususepu Fellaini, who is now a professor at UNISA, and still comes and teaches on the course, has done extremely well, won several awards. Another interesting case is Atherton Mutumbwera, who was a student on the course. He went to England and started a company called Hutano. So he did what the DSI would like us to do, is get students to start companies. And this company, Hutano, which he started in the UK, was recently sold. He decided, like all entrepreneurs, he wanted to move on. So he sold the company at a profit of something like 20 million rand. I'm not sure how much he got out because he had various investors. Anyhow, why I mentioned him in detail is he then contacted me and said maybe he wants to come and plow back into the course a little bit. So he's going to be coming back to South Africa to do some help me in a sense on some of the projects that we're trying and some of the projects which I'll be mentioning soon. So it's an amazing role model, and we're hoping to get some useful information from him. Okay, so that's the past. Where are we now? In June 2023, last year, the DSI suddenly came up with some new questions. They said that they're not happy with their overall nanoscience program. The reason being that not enough commercialization has happened. There are not enough industries in South Africa which have been formed by the students, and the CSIR, who has had lots of money, have not led to enough spin-offs. So this is the question: can we contribute to commercialization? And as you may or may not know, the history of commercialization in South Africa from publicly funded research is not all that good. About 20 years ago, the DSI decided that they should try and attempt to have more companies started in South Africa from research projects, and there are now technology transfer offices at all universities. But if you look at the success rate from that, it's unfortunately not very good. So that was the one question which they pushed us on. And the other one is, shouldn't there be other funders? Well, I'm going to concentrate on this first question and just mention one or two of the things which we've decided we should try and do, and to see whether we can actually answer some of these questions and to play a larger role in what's happening. Okay, so what did we do? As it happens, right from the start, this program had a management course as part of it. The people who started the course actually looked forward to what was needed and said, that's the purpose. The purpose is that many of these students should hopefully get into use the knowledge economy and use the knowledge they've got to start companies. And so there was a management course, which the chair of this meeting will know well about because she taught on it at some stage. And that program was aimed at just giving students a brief overview of how to run a small company, what is IP, how to run a business, how to get a business plan and things like that. But so clearly not enough students did start a business. And in talking to various people, I discovered that clearly that's a bit optimistic to think that a master's student is now suddenly going to start a company. There's just not enough funders available to take chances on things like that. On the other hand, the government has also got TIA and various other programs to try and make this happen. But the first thing we did is we decided that we should strengthen this entrepreneurship, this management course. We now call it entrepreneurship. We sort of emphasize the entrepreneurship aspects. And we don't necessarily think that the students are going to be starting businesses, but we hope that they will at least try to do that. And if they go and work at a company, they will we've planted a seed so that they will think about perhaps starting companies in future. We've said that to the DSI, that what we really need to do is to get students into companies, and then hopefully they can play a role in that way. As I mentioned earlier, we have about 30% of students who go to industry, but the aim now is to push that up so that more students will get there. One thing we've thought about is how can we choose students who are born entrepreneurs would be the ideal. But we have found that everybody is not a born entrepreneur. You can also train some entrepreneurs. Another thing we did is we had a pitching competition last year, which went pretty well at the end of 2023. And quite a lot of students were quite excited about pitching their ideas for starting a company. And we are hoping that that will also lead to future development of companies. But more importantly, I think the way to go, and that's a problem at all universities in South Africa, that we often don't have enough contact with companies. So the one way in which we have managed to get students involved in industry and in companies is internships. So we've spoken to the DSI and said what we need is a lot more internships, and they have agreed with us. And so they're giving money for internships in future, and we're going to try to get the master's students to go and do an internship at companies which are already existing. We're also trying to see if some companies can fund projects for student research. If they say, well, we have a problem in making something, or if they say, well, if we can perhaps get a UWC to do some research on something, that could lead to them employing somebody afterwards as well. We're also looking for such joint research projects with companies. And the other idea that we've got is maybe we could achieve a lot more if we have many of the researchers in the universities working together rather than having lots of individual programs. So the important question, of course, is can this work? And I've looked at companies around Cape Town, and I was actually quite surprised and happy to see that there are several examples of companies in the nanoscience field in Cape Town where some of our alumni are working. So these students that we have trained in the nanoscience field are finding useful employment. There's Stellenbosch Nanofibers Company, which is a company making nano fibers, and they are quite successful. And two of our ex-students are working there. There's Medical Diagnostic, a very successful startup company run by Ashley Ace, who's a UWC graduate as well. You might have seen him highlighted in several magazines and newspapers. He's a very successful entrepreneur. And then there's a company I only managed to talk to recently called Synexa. They're working in the pharmaceutical industry and doing quite a lot of research and development. And at least one of our ex-students are working there. So internships, we think, is the way to go. Collaboration with companies, if they can suggest projects, that would be a much better way of linking us to research and hopefully playing a role in industry in South Africa. And then my other big idea is that we should have collaborative research within the program and not in the sort of usual South African system where researchers tend to work individually. There are lots of reasons for that. So we plan to have workshops on, for example, things like energy, batteries, sensors, and so on. Okay, that's my story. Thanks very much. We acknowledge the support from the DSI, and I'll be very interested in other people who want to contribute to this, who have links in industry or links to companies who we might get involved with as well, so that we can not just produce theses which sit on shelves, but actually get involved more in playing a useful role in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Prof. I afforded you the opportunity to not to talk. We've won some time due to two of our presenters not able to present in this session. So I'm gonna just see if there's any questions. Let me just go to the chat for Prof. Lindsay. I'm not seeing any. I think so I've vested interest here, as you mentioned. I taught on this and from my experience it was very interesting, me coming obviously from the management, the EMS side, information system side, and then working with the students on this program and the immense potential and maybe Dr. Tim Corsi, I mean, if we're talking about, and I'm so sorry that I cut you off in your session. I then thought we were still very much short and running short of time. So I'm going to give some more opportunity for you to work to answer some questions as well. If in terms of your presentation, just the power of collaboration, the power of and Prof, I think you mentioned this, of us working together. At the time, I found there's such immense potential by the things that the students were busy developing, and you know, just harnessing that and getting that commercialized. So well done. I think the kind of the focus in what you're working on is great for this program. How many students do you currently have on the program, and is it still kind of with the 3 universities? I think you did say that it's still 3 or 4 universities.
Yes, it's 4 universities, so that makes it a little more difficult to kind of talk to the students once they're doing their research, because then they are spread all over, well, at the other 3 universities as well. So I've kind of concentrated on Cape Town, and as I say, there are some companies in the local area which we can link up to. But it is important, as you say, or interesting, as you say, that this is probably one of the very, very few science groups or science students in the country who actually get a course taught on management / entrepreneurship and so on. And it's quite interesting how some students think this is a total waste of their time, but many students find this quite interesting. And this year I've also had them go to other talks. I got people like Luan Africa from the TTO office to talk to them about what is a patent and what is IP and things like that, which was also always in the management course, but tended to be rushed through. Whereas now I'm trying to sort of emphasize to them that they actually have something unique. They have some sort of expertise in the sciences, which can often be turned into a company. It's not just many entrepreneurship courses just say, well, I don't know, go and buy some potatoes, make them into small packets and sell them. That's fine. Everybody can do that. But there's however many unemployed South Africans who can try that. The science students have an advantage because they know some knowledge about something specific that they've researched. And very often those things could have applications which they should be looking at. And certainly when we had the pitching competition, there were various different ideas, from taking their research to doing something, to one student who was working on the sort of pharmacy side said, well, he wants to start a pharmacy at the taxi rank because that's where people really need to buy headache pills and things like that.
Yeah, no, it's very, very interesting. I'm just going to open it up. There was a question. We'll just see this as this kind of our question and answer session. There was a question from to Dr. Nkozimulo that in terms of your presentation, just saying thank you for sharing the case in relation to the role of formal retail development on local economic development. I'm curious as to what has been the impact of the local economic growth on the, oh no, this is an old question, sorry. One of the reasons why rural areas have not experienced retail development is due to the fact that they are located away from the urban areas. With security response, thus investors have struggled to motivate the region to invest in this area, as they do attract criminal activities. Moreover, when we speak of improving the quality of life, we are looking at the society that is able to afford and access better healthcare, better education, etc. And when people are employed, they will be able to provide those on their own, eliminating the dependency on government social grants to sustain their livelihoods. So that was your answer. I don't know if you wanna just expand on that a little bit. Thembinkosi? Maybe you can just also switch on your camera just for the panel.
Okay.
Here we go.
All right. Thank you. Can I have the question again? Because my study was on renewable energy efficient projects in low-income communities.
So this one, this was from Selinkosi to Nonkazimulo. Sorry, not to you. I'm putting you on the spot here for no reason, asking you to answer a question on something. This was to Nkazimulo.
Okay.
And then that there was an answer, but I was just wondering if he would like to expand on that a little bit, Nkazimulo. Let's see. Otherwise, I'll just go to the next question sorry, it's jumping around. And I think this is to Prof. Lindsay. I think without proper mentorship, starting a business is really hard, especially on the novel research. I participated in the entrepreneur training and competitions offered by UWC, and I'm still struggling to get the business off the ground.
Yeah, I've actually answered that in the chat as well, but let me just say something. I agree entirely that students need mentors to be able to do something like that. We have actually made contact. I've thought of that, and we've spoken to a company in Cape Town called InnoCircle, run by a lady called Karen Ekstien. She has a degree in the sciences and worked for TIA for a while, and now she runs this company which prepares people for pitching competitions and also provides mentorship. So she knows lots of people in the industry, and she herself was quite instrumental in helping Ashley Ace, one of the people I mentioned who's running a successful company here in Brackenfell. So there are people around, and I agree that you really need funding, but mentors are just as important. There is funding available, but it's obviously difficult to get long-term funding. Often people will help you to start something, but if you're not selling something fairly soon, it is really difficult to keep going. But as I say, there are some mentors available, and if you contact me, I can put you in contact with people like Karen Ekstien.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, just to add to that, UWC also now has an innovation center in Parow, which I'm not sure if everybody is aware of that, which is trying to do exactly this to help with startup companies.
Yes, and we have that, and it's the small business clinic. It's linked. I think that's what you're referring to, Prof. The small business clinic that we now have as part of the EMS faculty.
Okay, and yes, sure.
Yes. There's another question, Prof. Do you think incorporating entrepreneurial courses as part of undergraduate courses will assist across all faculties? This is from Dr. Maedwa.
Yes, that's a good point. If you talk to people like A.B. Oliver, who's the head of the innovation section here at UWC, that is their main aim is to try to get to a point where everybody at university has a small exposure to entrepreneurship. There are many countries where this is fairly common. In South Africa, it's still a little scarce. I mean, we seem to be somehow based on the idea that we're like the British universities where we don't really talk about applications. We do blue sky research. If you go to England, you find that that's no longer true. The British universities don't operate like that anymore. They all have technology parks and things like that. So sure, it would be very useful if all students get exposed to that. I mean, I've often seen too that some of our master's students would probably be interested in working in industry, but they're not exposed to that. They don't have an uncle working for a company or whatever. So often they would drift into a PhD, not because they particularly want to do a PhD, but because they couldn't find a job or whatever. Science students with a master's in science have skills, and those skills are still needed in South Africa. Despite all the unemployment, if you have skills, you can certainly find a job, not necessarily in the field where you are doing your master's, but somewhere in there will be opportunities, and especially science students should have an advantage there. But sure, no, if all students going to be exposed to entrepreneurship, I'm sure that'll be great.
No, I fully support that. I think it shouldn't be something that just sits in the EMS faculty. It should be something that is wide explored, and such as you mentioned, collaboration, interdisciplinary research where the science students can work with the business students, and there's a lot of potential in terms of starting to incorporate that. I just want to ask if we almost at the end of this session, but Nonkazimulo, are you still there? If you can just maybe switch on your camera. Just seeing if you're there. Just going to Zinnia. Zinnia, is he still? I see you in this session. If you can maybe just we kind of had to cut your session a little bit short. So I don't know if you have anything that you would like to add or anything that you would like to say before we conclude. Okay, I take that maybe you are not able to share at the moment. So thank you everyone for a very interesting session. We did lose two of our presenters, but I think it gave us some time to kind of we made up some time, and thank you to everyone who's joined this session. We kind of now concluding the sessions for the day. There will be a presentation by Conversations Africa, Prof. Pufungwa at 4:05 so if everyone can just please join again for that, and then we'll just close the sessions for the day. I think we will, and I will now let you all go and have stretch your legs and please join us again at 4:05. Thank you to all the presenters. It has been very interesting. We went from, we covered a lot of topics, a lot of different areas, and thank you for your contribution. I am going Welcome back, everyone. Bufungwa. Thank you for joining us. Do you have a presentation that you are on mute? I can still see your mute is on. There we go. Welcome. Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm gonna hand over to you for your presentation, and then I'll just give you an indication. If it's about 2 minutes before the end, I'll just switch myself on so you know. I'll just give you a little bit of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline. And thank you, Dr. Selenkosi and Prof. Maitwa for the invitation. I got a graveyard shift, but I'm honored and really happy to be here, and happy that there's still more people. Yeah, you stayed the course, so I'll keep it short, colleagues. I think my role or my job here today was just to say, colleagues, we want to partner with you. I managed to listen into some of the presentations from the researchers, and it was all great information. I'm going to get into my presentation. I think it will all make sense in terms of why I think we should be friends and why we should partner together going forward. So for those of you in the room that may not be familiar with my organization, the organization that I'm representing today, which is called the Conversation Africa. Let me tell you a little bit just about who we are. In short, colleagues, we are a nonprofit and we publish a news and analysis website. It's free for you to read, so please log on to our site, theconversation.com/Africa, and you will find us there. So we look like a News 24, a Mail and Guardian, and CNN, but the key thing that distinguishes the conversation from other media and sources of news that we might be utilizing is who can write and be published on the conversation, and that is academics. We are a platform for scientists in Africa to write about their science, to write about their work, to share their work and expertise with our communities in a newsy way, in an analysis way, in a way that's backed up by science, because that's what you bring as scientists and academics. But what we change on the platform or when you read our site is the language of science. It's to say, yes, we publish in journals and then we can use our high English, right? But when you're talking to our communities out there, why don't you demystify the language of science and share your knowledge and expertise? So we really exist to provide a bridge between what cooks and happens in academia with our societies, right? So that's us, colleagues. We exist to really amplify your voices as scientists and really capturing all of this complex work, right? It is complex, but the language doesn't have to be complex. And we package your expertise into short articles of 800 to 1,000 words long. And some of the presentations that I listened to certainly relevant to the times type of research that you're doing. And it's got a home, there's a home for you as academics to write and publish the conversation. So for us, what is science? It is everything. Arts, culture, humanities, well covered on the conversation. Business and economy, education, environment and energy, health and medicine, politics and society, science and technology. We cover everything, right? So for us, science is knowledge. Any knowledge is science, and if you've done research on it, we want to help to share that, help you to share that with the general public. So who can write on the conversation is what distinguishes us. It's our unique selling point, to use marketing speak. And who is that? There are 3 criteria. You need to only meet one of them, right? So it's postdocs who are attached and affiliated with the university or a research council. You can write in your area of expertise, where if you look at your PhD, you can see you've been studying these themes for years and years. You can write and be published on the conversation. Academics, even if you've got a master's, but you've been teaching at a university for 5-7 years on a particular subject, on particular themes, you too can write and be published on the conversation in your area of expertise. And criteria number 3 is PhD candidates, who advanced PhD candidates, we like to say, who we often ask that they call the supervisor or another expert that meets the 2 criteria that I spoke about. Because why? We are an evidence-based platform, and we really are here to harvest the knowledge that you've spent years and years, working on and putting it out there into the public domain to read, right? We do research, we do analysis, to solve problems, right? And so we are a platform for you to share your research findings with the world. And the conversation is 9 years old. We launched in May of 2015. In South Africa, based out of Braamfontein in Johannesburg, but we're an African project, and since we launched, we now have colleagues that are working out of East Africa in Nairobi, looking after our East Africa region. We've got colleagues in Nigeria, Ghana, and Senegal, looking after that region as well. But really to say we are a pan-African platform here to really amplify the voices of scientists and to say, here's a space for you to shape discourses from an evidence-based perspective. And since then, we've published over 7,000 academics and scientists who've seen the vision of what we want to do, over 10,000 articles that we've published. So really, I think what we saw is the gap in the market. These numbers are exemplary of that. At the site, we are tracking on a monthly basis 600,000, 8 times 800, a million unique readers that come to read your work. As academics, because it's your name next to your article. We're just the science communication team working with you to make sure that the languaging and the storytelling of the things that you want to share, backed by science, which is you, everything is easy for people to understand, it's catchy, things like that that we help you with, and we put that word out for you, right? So yeah, numbers just to say, there's actually an audience wanting to read from people who know what they're talking about. And so those are our numbers. And in terms of things, colleagues, when you publish in the conversation, you publish under Creative Commons license. And what that means for us as a nonprofit is what we do is out there to be reshared as far and wide as possible. We've got an audience development team that keeps relationships going with Mail and Guardian, Times, etc. Just to encourage them to say, hey, this article is here, Tembinkosi wrote it. And it's well accredited in terms of any claims that you're making in your article. We provide a click through to where your research might be sitting if people want to learn more about the science making, and then they can pick it up. And when they pick it up to republish on their websites, they should credit you. Number 1 is the author. Number 2, they should not change anything. Right. For us as well as the conversation, we don't publish anything until you click approve as the academic, as the scientist. Reason why being, we don't want to misquote you. So we wait for your authorization to say, hey, I'm happy with the edits. I'm happy with what I've put down. These are my words. These are my thoughts. And so you click approve on our editing and writing suite, and then once you give that go ahead, we publish. So equally, our media publishers should also publish what you would have approved of the conversation, so that your work is not distorted, meanings are not distorted, and that they capture the essence of what you want to do. So colleagues, just to clarify, we are not a journal. We do not peer review anything. We leave scientists to do peer review in journals that are peer reviewed. That is the foundation of your knowledge making, other peers critiquing your methodology, problem statement, your methodology, why did you choose it? Is it appropriate for that? Etc. You do that in your journals. What we do as the conversation is really to translate what's in those journals, what's in that doctorate, right? Once you've got what you're a postdoc, and how do we start to share some of the insights from our findings with the general public. So we are not a journal. Who reads us is not academics, which is the case in journal articles, right? It's other academics, other scientists. Who we are targeting is non-academics, general public out there, to look them into what you know. So we are a media organization dedicated to sharing knowledge, and hopefully that informs decisions, right? Be they personal decisions or policy decisions as well. As we're starting to learn about our readers, we know that 90% of them sit in government and do policy making, 7 are in teaching and education. right? Which is other scientists, academics like you reading the site as well, which is great. Others are in NGOs and media and things like that. But really to highlight with this slide that when you're writing for the conversation, think, how would I write about my science and my findings for my 16-year-old, my 18-year-old? How do I explain my science and all this knowledge to my grandmother, right? That's the language you start to put on when you're thinking science communication and writing for platforms such as the conversation. We've had a partnership, colleagues, with the University of the Western Cape, dating back to 2015 when we started. And since then, the slide that I'm presenting is just to show that the alive partnership that we have, 166 UWC academics that have published 334 articles with the conversation. We're able to track how many times the articles have been read, 4.5 million times. Where are your readers? In a digital platform, we track our cookies, and we're able to tell that largely read in South Africa, 41% of your readership is here. But because we're digital, knowledge travels, and your readers could be in anywhere. In the US, making a portion of 22% of your readership as a UWC authored articles, United Kingdom, etc., etc. And this report is available for the university leadership to have a look. Just wanted to profile and highlight some of our authors at the University of the Western Cape. Prof. Gottschall has published 71 articles, colleagues. He's just been such a supporter of the work that we do. Prof. Fielding, when he used to be within your research office, great champion of the conversation. 7 articles that he published with us. Prof. Yu, Derek Yu has also published with us. From Ben Cousins, just to highlight that we cover everything and everybody, as the top 10 of your authors represent. So, for those of you who are students like me, PhD candidates, I actually read the conversation for research purposes. Why? Because I'm reading my professors, but this time in easier language. But as I said, provide click-throughs to where they are researching and sitting, so that we can read those journal articles. So an encouragement to say, read the site as well. You'll get a sense of what is it that we are doing and what we are talking about today. And yeah, so the news and analysis website, in terms of what we cover on the site, it's a mix of 2 main things. One type of articles is based on research. So you've just published in a journal. You've just passed your PhD, so your postdoc, new postdoc, that's new research that you can use as your starting point to say, you know what, I found some incredible things that could help shape policy, help inform our societies with something. You can use that to actually have this and think, how do I start to unpack some of these insights in the conversation? So we call those research-related type of articles. We also, colleagues, do news analysis. For news analysis, you don't have to have new research, but you do have to have expertise in that particular area. But the articles that we call news and analysis are really just trying to say, how can you, with the knowledge you hold, help us as the general public understand certain things. Right, South Africa elections this year, marking 30 years of democracy, a big time for political scientists to write about electoral reforms, whatever the election issues were. So we call those news analysis. For example, Mpox, right, which is a big outbreak at the moment, getting academics who have studied Mpox to talk about something current, how to protect yourself, things like that. Or another example could be World AIDS Day or Breast Cancer Month. If that's what you do, that's also the great time for you to talk about breast cancer research, new relating to what's happening and trending in society, which is an important point when starting to think, how do I do science communication for the general public, is to use your insights as they are needed currently in society, but of course to say, you have research. That's always a great, it's already newsworthy because it's new research. So you want to write about your research as it's new as well. Big array of, we do explainers as well, colleagues, things that you as academics might think, or you as a knowledge expert on that particular subject might think, this is simple. Everybody should know this. No, some of the articles that do so well on the conversation are just explaining phenomena. What is sugar and what will happen if you stop eating it? those of us who are addicted to sugar, I'm one of those I'm trying to contain or limit my sugar intake. Just simple things that seem simple to you, but can actually help to explain and elucidate things. We do Q&As, but we help you with all of these colleagues. We really just wanted to say, when you're thinking science communication, think, do I have something new? If you do, write about it. Or if there's something in society happening that you want to help shape discourses around you at that time. So we're here, and I'm going to wrap up. Caroline, I see you. I'll take just a minute or two. Some of the articles that we published this year that I thought are worth sharing, just so you can, as examples, right? So read following our day-to-day, Prof. Ed Nelson, who wrote about the Meerkat, the South African radio telescope that's transformed our understanding of the cosmos. Beautiful article to read. You know, we don't always have to focus on the problems, but also just interesting things about the universe. And it's got 18,000 reads so far, largely read in South Africa, which is great. But of course, other readers who are interested in this type of things in the UK, in the US, with the pie chart on the right. We also published from Derek Yu, an economist, and his article, actually 2 articles with us, were around, jobs, big issue for South Africa. So Africa's youth wage, huge numbers of young people have no jobs, there's wrong skills and little hope. So really just talking about something that's topical, and then the job market. But that's Prof. Derek Yu's dashboard, we like to call it. As an author, you have access to your readers, you get to see this as well. But really just to highlight that that's how we package your insights, even from our headline. You can see we try to really sometimes we accuse of dumbing down things, right? The science can be complex, but the language should be dumb. It should just be easy language, but you know that it's complex to do research, right? And we should be rigorous. We should do that. But when you're doing science communication, really think, how do I make my research relevant? How do I make it easy for people to understand? Or what I'm proposing as policy or things to do, how do I make it easy for people to know? So for researchers in the room that are presented today, my story was just to say we're here as a conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to publish from you. We've got training, science communication training coming up on the 30th of September. Please reach out to me, attend the workshop, and then we get into more detail on how do you actually get started and how do we assist you with that. So that's my story, Caroline. I hope I have and that you could hear.
Thank you so much. I think it's so valuable to just reinforce it and just to remind us again about the role that you play and the important from Prof. Lindsay. Just a comment to say I would like to really, in capital, support the conversation, which I look at regularly. Now that people get their news from social media and where traditional media companies are struggling, the conversation is a vital publication.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, indeed. Please get in touch. Get in touch.
Maybe you mentioned training, so maybe that is something that we can just also just share. I'm just looking at Dr. Maedwa. That's maybe something that we can just remind colleagues about, and just the role of the conversation and where to get in touch. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, for the opportunity.
Any questions or any comments? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Now we just have to get writing.
Just get writing. Just get in touch. If that's okay. And Mia as well is assisting us with the workshop. So she's got all the details, so she can share with everybody.
Thank you so much. Then I think we're coming to the end of day 1. Now, Dr. Maedwa, I don't know if you want to just say something just from the research office, just in conclusion to day 1. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here.
Thank you very much, Prof. You're putting me on a spot because I'm supposed to be concluding at the last day, but I would like to extend, thank you to all the participants, the academics and the students for outstanding presentations. It shows very strongly the social impact aspect, and then also the importance of collaboration, intercollaboration within our faculties. And then also there's a room of improvement, and also there's room for celebration of what already exists that is out there. But thank you very much, Chair. I will put it back to you. Thank you, bye.
Thank you, Dr. Maidwa. Yes, I think what today showed is let me just see, my noise is on. Just all the different areas that we covered today, health, education, technology, sustainability, emerging economies, and then really going to nanoscience and astrophysics, and it's incredibly important that to have these kind of sessions where we all join and we can learn from one another and see the important work, as you mentioned, Dr. Maidwa, that's being done at the university. I think what often happens is we tend to work in our little areas of focus, and it's important to see how we actually, by working together and by collaborating, how we can extend this, where often our focus, it transcends, especially if we start seeing at the themes of of the research week, just how important is it that we all start focusing, working together with this whole focus on Africa, on South Africa, emerging economies, interdisciplinary work. So thank you everyone for being present. Thank you for staying till the end, and hopefully this is the start of a wonderful research week for us. Looking forward to the rest of the week. Goodbye to everyone, and thank you to the presenters.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you.